Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Sight for White, welcoming you to this week's Talking News on Friday the 17th of November 2023. Well, it has been a bit of a wet week, but I'm happy to say that the hovers carried on running and I was able to come over to the island. This week I've been quite busy interviewing and we're hoping to welcome some new faces to Sight for White. Our finance officer left for personal reasons a couple of months ago and we finally seem to have a replacement, and our sensory service manager also left earlier this year and we're replacing them with a new lovely lady called Jackie. We've all been busy getting ready for the lunch tomorrow, which of course will be today by the time you hear this, where it is the celebration of the charity's year ended the 31st of March 2023 at the Isle of Wight College. Everybody, please try and stay dry. Thank you, Lisa.
Here is this week's charity news for 17th of November. Swimming at Medina Leisure Centre, Newport, between 1:15pm and 2:15pm. The cost is £6 and transport is available. We have full use of the pool and therefore, even if you would just like gentle exercise in the water, please come along, you'll be very welcome. Our IT drop-in resumes at Millbrook House on Monday 9:30am until 12:30pm. This is now an appointment-only service, so please call the office and book a slot with Sam. Yoga is on Tuesdays between 1:45 and 2:45pm at Millbrook every week, and the cost is £4. All welcome to come along. Coffee and chat is on Wednesdays between 10am and 11:30am at Millbrook House. Please come along and meet the staff, volunteers and members for a chat and also to look at second-hand equipment, seek advice, etc. This is open to everyone. Wednesday afternoon is our Eye on Social group. This is open to everyone, members, volunteers and friends of the charity. This month we are joined by Sally Ash from the Isle of Wight Council talking about scams. This is a great informative talk and an insight into how easy it can be to be scammed. The group starts at 2pm and the cost is £3 to include refreshments. Our monthly Strider group is on Friday, meeting at either Millbrook House or Newport Library, and will stride to Arreton Barnes for lunch. For more details, please call the office.
We are delighted to announce that we will be having Hayley in on Thursday the 7th of December to run a foot care clinic. Hayley not only cuts nails but deals with hard skin, callus, treatment of corns, verrucas plus foot cream with a massage. The appointment will be an hour and a half slot and the cost is £25. Clinics will be held at Millbrook House on a Thursday. Hayley is also available for home visits if required. If you would like an appointment, please call Susan. We still have a few of our charity Christmas cards at only £3.50 per pack of 10. Please call the office if you would like some. Also, calendar and diaries are available to order. We're very pleased to announce we have been donated a beautiful hand-sewn quilt which we have decided to raffle. You can buy a square for £2 from the office. The draw will take place on December the 13th. It is a king-size quilt and beautiful. It is hung in Millbrook House on display. Everyone should have now received raffle books, but if you would like more, please do not hesitate to call the office and we can send more out. We have some wonderful prizes on offer from the luxury hamper, bottles of wine, numerous vouchers, etc. Our wonderful volunteers have once again been busy knitting chocolate orange covers and are available for £3 each from Millbrook House.
This article, read by Howard, is from the Island Echo and concerns a brand new landmark in East Cowes. A new feature could be installed along East Cowes seafront to mark a lesser-known historical figure who played a big role in the town. An archway is proposed at the entrance to Bell's Landing on East Cowes Esplanade to raise the profile of Robert Bell, who once owned Norris Castle and a very large part of the town. The Isle of Wight Council now owns the landing, but said Mr. Bell's significance to the town is not well known or celebrated in the town, and so it's seeking permission to install the archway. It could be made of galvanised steel and painted black to match existing archways across the river in Cowes, at the Royal Yacht Squadron and Trinity Pontoons. The archway would also match the railings at the nearby Victoria Barracks. Mr. Bell, a 19th century newspaper tycoon, who was also a member of the Royal Yacht Squadron, owned much of East Cowes, including the space along the esplanade, and built the mile-long sea wall. He also gave part of his land away, which is now Albany Green, with the proviso that nothing is built on it. The tidal landing stage, now used as a public launch for kayaks and canoes, is also thought to be where a telephone line came into the island, so Alexander Graham Bell could demonstrate the telephone to Queen Victoria. In January 1878, the first long-distance calls were made from Osborne House to London, Cowes and Southampton. The archway will go over the current opening to Bell's Landing, the seawall, near the former public toilets and Albany Green, to improve and emphasise the landing point, the council says. A solar light could be put on top of the archway for nighttime use. You can view the plans 23/01769/FUL on the Isle of Wight Council's planning register. Comments can be submitted until 8th of December. The area is part of the Levelling Up bid, which has seen buildings, businesses and public space improved, under £5.8 million from government to become a marine hub. The archway could be a further improvement to the area, the council has said.
Environment Agency issues initial report into the historic rainfall event response. From the Island Echo, read by Joyce. The Environment Agency has provided further details on its response to flooding in Ryde during what has been described as the largest rainfall event in at least 75 years, with 50.9mm rainfall recorded in just 3 hours and 83.3mm in a wider 18-hour period. Over 100 properties were flooded on the morning of 25th October when the Monk Tonmead Brook burst its banks and surface water built up, flooding nearby Simeon Street Recreation Ground and surrounding roads. The railway tunnel at Ryde was full of water, which was at times lapping over onto the esplanade. The response to the incident by the Environment Agency has come under scrutiny, with questions asked over why only 2 of the possible 6 flood defence boards were inserted at Simeon Recreation Ground. In 2019, the Environment Agency completed the construction of a £5 million upgrade to the existing flood alleviation scheme, with the construction of a new outfall into the harbour and a flood wall around Simeon Street Rec. This area is a designated flood storage area surrounded by a 1.3 metre high wall with 3 access points that can be blocked off with 5 or 6 flood drop boards. It's said that the Environment Agency's contractors were not deployed until 4:41 a.m, but it is known that the flood warning was issued over an hour earlier at 3:29 a.m. The 2 flood boards were inserted by 5:45 a.m, meaning it was over 2 hours between the flood warning being issued and the boards being partially installed. The decision to deploy contractors was only made at 4:41 a.m. when a level of 2.5 metres was recorded at the debris screen to the north side of Simeon Street Rec. An interim report has been published in which the Environment Agency says the decision to only insert 2 floodboards was made by an unnamed duty officer, so it didn't prevent surface water from flowing into the recreation ground. If that became the overriding source of flood risk, as the event developed. It has been confirmed that contractors were soon tasked to undertake clearance of the debris screen at Honey Hill in Newport, to then return to Ryde to install the remaining drop boards. Due to the main Newport to Ryde road becoming impassable, the contractors didn't get back to Ryde until 8:30 a.m, by which time the box containing the boards was completely underwater and therefore couldn't be installed. The Environment Agency says that it was working to predictions of 26 millimetres of rainfall between midnight and 6 a.m. on the 25th, when in fact the actual figure was 61.8 millimetres. This meant that just one standby gang was available rather than the 2 or 3 that would be available during predicted events. According to official data, between midnight and 10 on Wednesday 25th, some 72.1 millimetres of rain was recorded, with 15.9 millimetres falling between midnight and 3 a.m. This is the equivalent of 2 to 3 months of rainfall in just 3 hours. Some 83.3 millimetres of rain was recorded in just 18 hours. The month of October saw 258.3 millimetres of rainfall, some 21.8 millimetres more than the year of the Great Storm in 1987. Famously, the hurricane of 87 was not forecast, but it turned out to be the storm of a lifetime. But now, 36 years later, the flooding of 25th October has shown that agencies can still be caught out despite the advances in modern technology. It has been admitted that due to the size and timing of the unprecedented rainfall event, EA duty officers did not anticipate the significant disruption to transport links, the speed in which the rivers were rising, or the subsequent quantities of water that were flowing down this catchment. In their report, the Environment Agency says, although the flood levels in Simeon Recreation Ground exceeded the top level of the 2 boards that were installed, given that properties have flooded from surface water during much smaller rainfall events historically, it is unclear whether the overall numbers of property flooding was made worse by not installing all of the flood drop boards, and if so, by how much? A more detailed review will in due course look into the full picture and whether the fully activated Ryde flood alleviation scheme would have been overwhelmed. The Isle of Wight Council is to coordinate a Section 19 review into the flooding, exploring the actions of not only the Environment Agency, but also Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service, Inland Roads, and the local authority itself. It has been confirmed that the pumps at Cornwall Slip were operational between 3 a.m. on 25th and 0:45 a.m. on 26th. A gauge has been present at Ryde since 1949.
This is Michael reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Plans for Sandown public toilet redevelopment flushed away. Plans to redevelop a public toilet block on the Isle of Wight seafront have fallen through after the proposed developer walked away. The Isle of Wight Council is now considering its options for the closed Pier Street toilets to determine what it does next. The toilets opposite Sandown Pier have been earmarked for redevelopment for nearly 4 years, turning it into a cafe and shop with improved toilet facilities. The plans had been approved and a preferred developer chosen, but issues around the work required to the public space in front of the building held up plans. The council said in October 2022 it was committed to the redevelopment for both residents and visitors and was working with partners to achieve the redevelopment as soon as possible. In a recent update, however, the authority confirmed the developer withdrew their interest after receiving a final price from builders to carry out the works. The preferred developer, not named for commercially sensitive reasons, had been in the prime position for the redevelopment since July 2021. But during the following years, no contracts or sale of the land was completed, despite the council's wishes. The planning permission has now also expired, leaving the authority to consider its options, with councillors and a question mark hanging over the project. The toilets, while in an outdated condition, have been reopened during the summer and for events to provide public facilities in the town.
This is Patrina reading from Isle of Wight Radio. Isle of Wight Council set to debate motion in support of WASPy women. Isle of Wight councillors will debate a motion calling for compensation for women affected by state pension age increases at Wednesday's full council meeting. More than 3.8 million women born in the 1950s across the UK were affected by the government's decision to increase the state pension age from 60 to 65 and later 66. There are approximately 11,000 affected women on the Isle of Wight, making up some 8% of the population, according to Office for National Statistics data. Many of those affected were unaware of the proposed increase to their state pension age and missed vital opportunities to plan their retirements properly. Tens of thousands were plunged into poverty as a result. Ahead of the council meeting, Isle of Wight women have spoken of the financial and emotional impacts on them. Some were forced to sell their homes and cars in order to meet rising food costs. WASPy Solent campaigners are expected to assemble outside County Hall from 5 p.m. ahead of Wednesday's full council meeting for photographs with Councillor Michael Lilly and other supporters. Sue, a WASPy woman living in Ryde, said, "All my life I have been told that I would receive the state pension at 60. I didn't discover I wouldn't get this until I was 58, which was too late to do anything. I sold my house to buy a basement flat on the island that needed a complete renovation as I couldn't afford mainland house prices. It was cheap, but it's often cold and damp. I have just had to sell my car as this year I won't be able to heat, eat and run my home as well as afford the car running costs." The Solent Women Against State Pensions Equality, WASP, group campaigners for fair and fast compensation for women locally who were affected by the government's failings. The motion, led by campaigners from the Solent WASPy group, will be brought by Liberal Democrat Councillor Michael Lilly to next Wednesday's full council meeting. The motion calls upon the council leader to write to Work and Pensions Secretary demanding a swift resolution to remedy the injustices caused in the form of an immediate compensation package. Councillor Michael Lilly, Liberal Democrat councillor for Ryde, Apley and Elmfield, who brought the motion in support of WASPy women, said, "Women born in the 1950s across the island have had their retirement plans devastated due to a catalogue of errors in Department of Works and Pensions handling of state pensions age changes. I'm proud to be supporting such tenacious campaigners at Wednesday's full council as we continue to fight for fair and fast compensation for the injustices they face." Councillors previously backed a motion to support fair and fast compensation for WASPy women in 2016, making the local authority one of the first in the UK to declare their support. Sheila Simmons, Solent coordinator for the Women Against State Pensions Inequality (WASPI campaign, said, "We're very grateful for the support shown by so many Isle of Wight councillors. Now the government must act urgently to deliver fair and fast compensation to those affected by this long-running injustice. Thousands of 1950s-born women across the island are struggling to afford to heat their homes as a result, and these pressures will only worsen as temperatures continue to fall this winter."
This article, read by Howard, is from the Isle of Wight Radio and concerns the closure of a primary school. With a heavy heart, a tiny Isle of Wight primary school has been given its final order to close. Chillerton and Brookley Primary School will now shut its door for the final time at the end of December. Excuse me. The Isle of Wight Council's Cabinet unanimously agreed to the school's closure on December 31st, now less than 7 weeks away. Councillor Jonathan Bacon, the new Cabinet Minister for Education, said the council was where it was and they'd looked for other potential options, but the decision was made to publish the closure notice. It was previously said the council was out of options when it came to Chillerton and Brookley. After a consultation, the council considered the responses, of which the majority were in favour of closing the school and amalgamating it with Godsill. The former Cabinet Member for Education, Councillor Debbie Andre, said no one wanted to have to close the school and they'd been through a long process, but she was of the right mind that this is the right decision. Councillor Paul Fuller said the closure of any school is with a heavy heart, and while it was sad to lose a rural school, he hoped the move would help Godsill Primary to grow. He said pupil numbers were falling across the island and they needed to buckle up for the issues they're going to be facing in the future. Of the 9 primary-aged children that lived in the village, only 2 of them attended Chillerton and Brookley Primary School, but they've been taught since January in Godsill due to a lack of teachers. The authority's Alliance administration has been criticised for the way it's handled the school closures, being accused of indecisions and gamesmanship and appalling political decision-making by Chillerton and Brookley's head teacher Mark Snow. The school has been having financial troubles for more than 5 years, currently standing at a deficit of £74,372 and was deemed unviable by Mr. Snow. Island head teachers have been supportive of the move as it would lessen the burden on other primary schools.
Vote for your favourite location to plant King Charles III's coronation tree. From Isle of Wight Echo, read by Joyce. The HM Lord Lieutenant is inviting island residents to choose their preferred location or suggest where they would like to see His Majesty King Charles III's coronation tree planted. Voting for where the tree should be planted is now open and will run for 1 week, closing at noon on Wednesday the 22nd of November. Casting a vote is quick and easy. Simply visit forms.office.com/e/. Capital N, the figure 6, capital D, capital X, lowercase u, lowercase j, uppercase T, lowercase c, lowercase h, capital P, and choose your favourite spot or make a suggestion. Mrs. Susie Sheldon, the Lord Lieutenant of the Isle of Wight, said, "I would like to invite our island residents to vote and tell us where they would like to see His Majesty King Charles III's coronation tree planted. We have suggested 2 suitable sites, which are Northwood House Park and Apley Park, but we are also keen to hear your suggestions. Once the vote has taken place and we have our location winner, we can then choose a tree that best suits that area. Chairman of the council, Councillor Claire Critchison, said, "Planting a tree to mark the coronation of His Majesty King Charles III will leave a lasting legacy for our community, and it's great that island people can help pick where that will be." The Lieutenancy, the Council, and many organisations and individuals previously planted trees in 2022 to mark the Platinum Jubilee of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, and as part of the National Queen's Green Canopy campaign. You can find more details on that here. The Queen's Green Canopy, the Royal Family.
This is Michael reading an article from Island Echo. Planning permission refused for new Bembridge restaurant, despite obvious support. Plans to transform a derelict Bembridge building into a cafe and restaurant have been slammed as intrusive, with the Isle of Wight Council refusing planning permission. The local authority has delivered a heavy blow to those behind plans for the View at Lane End in Bembridge. Seaview's old fort owners, Will Simons and Justin Evely, revealed their ambitions for the seaside site earlier this year. Planning officers felt the proposals, which would provide a destination eatery in the town as well as a tidy up, a half-built eyesore, would be out of scale and context with the seafront surrounding, and be an over-dominant and intrusive development. The proposals would have created 2 floors of indoor dining space with outdoor terraces, 3 ensuite bedrooms and living spaces for staff accommodation, as well as a pizza, drink and ice cream kiosks. The council did note the plans had considerable support, with 72 letters being submitted in favour, and represent an investment in the town's tourism offer, but overall said the benefits would not outweigh the harm the development would cause. This was because of the excessive depth, size and scale of the overbearing adverse impact it would have on neighbours. The officers said the building, with its unusual design features, elevated terrace and extensive glazing, would be an intrusive feature in the landscape, appearing overlarge and not in keeping with the surroundings. The plans had been split public opinion, with 47 letters of objection submitted, including from the next-door RNLI station, which raised concerns about delays to launches due to congestion along Lane End Road. Planning officers also said the proposals do not provide sufficient parking, as policy dictates it should have at least 45 spaces, which cannot be provided. With such a shortfall in parking, an assessment was needed, officers said, which has not been provided in the planning documents. The Isle of Wight Council rejected it on 5 grounds, which included a lack of information about the ecology and drainage, and raised road safety concerns about vehicles entering and exiting the site. The refusal can be appealed to the Planning Inspectorate if the applicant so wishes.
This is Patrina reading from the Island Echo. UKSA enhances maritime training for students with new state-of-the-art simulator. UKSA is enhancing training for its maritime students with the addition of a new state-of-the-art Transas simulator suite, giving students the opportunity to perform training exercises in various parts of the world across the range of vessel types. The Transas simulator uses sophisticated software which simulates real-life scenarios, all from the safety of a shoreside training unit. This helped prepare future officers and masters for dangerous and challenging situations that they could be presented with whilst keeping watch on the bridge of a super yacht or commercial vessel. The cutting-edge technology, which has been operational for a month at UKSA's Cowes headquarters, using an industry-leading package which is tailored to the specific requirements of UKSA's training programs and is for students undertaking Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, MCAA, courses. In order to obtain certificates for competency for both officers of the watch, yachts less than 3,000 GT and master yachts less than 500 GT stroke 3000 GT, students can make full use of the simulator for their navigation courses, as well as the Electronic Chart Display and Information System, ECDIS, courses. Chris Frisby, Director of Training and Operations at UKSA, said, "It's fantastic that we are able to offer our students the very latest technology with the Transas suite as part of their training. The feedback from students has been great, and returning students have even commented on how impressive the new system is." Ross Kennedy, Senior MCA Instructor at UKSA, said, "This simulator gives us as instructors and lecturers the ability to build and run flexible, interesting and meaningful training exercises in which the key areas of navigation, instruments, bridge procedures and bridge resource management teamed with the human element can be taught to a high standard. We've currently got 10 training stations which include a full mission bridge." UKSA worked with Wärtsilä to develop the package for the simulators, which has been tailored to UKSA's exact needs, including various locations around the world, types of vessel and navigation instruments. Students currently on accredited MCA courses are able to access the Transas suite. These include OOW navigation and radar, master navigation and radar, and ECDIS. As part of the all-inclusive program with UKSA, this includes premium accommodation options within a full-board campus, ensuring students do not have to worry about organising meals and have full use of the many facilities on site. This is Petrina reading from Isle of Wight Radio. Support to continue for low-income island residents. Eligible low-income Isle of Wight residents could still be given support to pay their council tax bills. The local council tax scheme has been running for more than 10 years and provides a 70% discount on their council tax bill, meaning residents pay the remaining 30%. The Isle of Wight Council has said this year has been the first where those receiving support have dropped below 10,000 people. The level of support dipped in recent years, but was restored to 70% under the Alliance administration in May, to provide more support to residents which are experiencing financial difficulty amid the cost of living crisis. The Council's Cabinet last week unanimously agreed to recommend keeping the level of support at the same, ahead of a budget-setting process which was described as daunting and difficult as the authority looks to balance its books. The Council says financial backing to the scheme comes from the government but has reduced year on year, leaving the Island Authority with a bigger bill to foot. If the Council decides to increase or decrease the support given by 5%, it would either cost or make the Council an additional £366
£366,649.
£366,649. The debt relating to the local council.
The debt, I spoke as well.
The debt relating to the local council tax support schemes is now more than 2.5 million, as those on the scheme struggle to pay the reduced levels. The council says it's collecting some of the debt owed to it and will contribute to that.
That work.
And will continue to that work. A consultation was held earlier this year to gather feedback on the scheme, and of the 201 responses, 150 people disagreed with reducing the support to 65%. The majority of respondents to the survey were those on the scheme, and more than two-thirds said if the support was increased to a 75% discount, it would make their payments more affordable. The final decision to increase or decrease support will be made at the Isle of Wight Council's full meeting in January, ahead of the main budget-setting session. An exceptional hardship fund also exists within the council, which offers further help.
This article, read by Howard, is from the Island Echo and concerns a housing scheme at Whitwell. Controversial plans for a new housing development in Whitwell, which included moving a 130-year-old water hydrant, have been refused. The Isle of Wight Council this week rejected plans to build 22 houses off Whitwell High Street, which had residents in uproar. More than 110 objections were submitted against the plans, and a campaign against the sprawl started. A historically significant hydrant was also proposed to move 1.5 metres so a road to the development could be built. Isle of Wight Council officers said moving the hydrant would cause limited harm from the potential damage to the listed heritage asset, but had to be weighed against the public benefits of the housing development. The housing plans were submitted in September 2021 and then revised to contain fewer houses after previous plans were withdrawn. Officers considered the houses would make a significant positive contribution to meeting local housing needs, and the development would complement the character and context of the surrounding area and landscape. They also said it would result in some limited to moderate harm to the neighbours, but it would not be to a degree that justified refusal of the application on those grounds alone. The housing development was ultimately refused on 7 grounds. These included a lack of affordable housing and a lack of information on the archaeology of the site, the potential impact of protected species, and transport information about the impact on local highways. It was also refused because officers said the proposals had not demonstrated there were no other reasonably available sites within areas at lesser risk of flooding. The separate application to move the hydrant was refused after the housing, as officers said there was no mechanism to deliver the necessary public benefits required to balance the harm of moving it. The Grade 2 cast iron hydrants were built in 1887, paid for by the people of the village, and installed on various streets to improve the quality of drinking water and improve people's health. Residents had said it was inappropriate to move the public hydrant for personal gain.
Isle of Wight Youth Justice Service requires improvement, from Isle of Wight Radio, read by Joyce. Isle of Wight Youth Justice Service, YJS, has received an overall rating of requires improvement, following an inspection by His Majesty's Inspectorate of Probation. The report also inspected the quality of resettlement work the key services which need to be in place when a child is released from custody, for example, to meet accommodation needs, which was separately rated as good. Interim Chief Inspector of Probation, Sue McAllister, said it was a mixed picture for Isle of Wight Youth Justice Service. Staff are committed and determined to improve the lives of children under their supervision, but there are areas which we think need to be improved. This includes how the risk of harm a child may pose to others is identified and analysed, and greater input from the Management Board to lead the service's future. There are services in place to support children involved in substance misuse or with mental health issues, and a clear offer of support for parents or carers. However, inspectors felt the Management Board needed to ensure there were appropriate services available to help meet children's diverse needs, particularly their physical health and speech and language. It also found inconsistencies in the quality of work across both court work and out-of-court disposals, where children receive support without having to go to court. This was particularly pertinent in areas that focused on the safety and well-being of children. The report identified that some staff told us their workloads felt unmanageable at the time of this inspection, and this is something the inspection team have asked the YJS to address. Ms McAllister concluded, "We have made 7 recommendations which we believe will have a positive impact on youth justice services on the Isle of Wight. This includes recommendations to routinely gather and utilise the views of children and their parents or carers to inform service provision and strengthen management oversight to improve the quality of work with children."
This is Michael reading an article from Island Echo. Isle of Wight Youth Justice Service requires improvement, say Inspectorate. Isle of Wight's Youth Justice Services, YJS, has received an overall rating of requires improvement following an inspection by His Majesty's Inspectorate of Probation. Officers from the HM Inspectorate of Probation also inspected the quality of resettlement work, the key services which need to be in place when a child is released from custody, for example to meet accommodation needs, which were separately rated as good. Interim Chief Inspector of Probation, Sue McAllister, said, "It was a mixed picture of Isle of Wight Youth Justice Service. Staff are committed and determined to improve the lives of children under their supervision, but there are areas we think need to be improved. This includes how the risk of harm a child may pose to others is identified and analysed, and greater input from the Management Board to lead the service's future. We very much look forward to watching them develop and build on our recommendations from this inspection. There are services in place to support children involved in substances misuse or with mental health issues, and a clear offer of support for parents and carers. However, inspectors felt the Management Board needed to ensure there were appropriate services available to help meet children's diverse needs, particularly their physical health and speech and language. Inconsistencies were also found in the quality of work across both court work and out-of-court work disposals, where children receive support without having to go to court, particularly the areas that focused on the safety and well-being of children. It was identified that some staff told inspectors that workloads felt unmanageable at the time of this inspection, and this is something we have asked the YJS to address. A total of 7 recommendations which they believe will have a positive impact on youth justice services on the Isle of Wight, have been made. This includes recommendations to routinely gather and utilise the views of children and their parents or carers to inform service provision and strengthen management oversight to improve the quality of work with children.
This is Patrina reading from Isle of Wight Radio. Support to continue for low-income island residents. Eligible low-income Isle of Wight residents could still be given support to pay their council tax bills. The local council tax scheme has been running for more than 10 years and provides a 70% discount on their council tax bill, meaning residents pay the remaining 30%. The Isle of Wight Council has said this year has been the first where those receiving support have dropped below 10,000 people. The level of support dipped in recent years, but was restored to 70% under the Alliance administration in May, to provide more support to residents which are experiencing financial difficulty amid the cost of living crisis. The Council's Cabinet last week unanimously agreed to recommend keeping the level of support at the same, ahead of a budget-setting process which was described as daunting and difficult as the authority looks to balance its books. The Council says financial backing to the scheme comes from the government but has reduced year on year, leaving the Island Authority with a bigger bill to foot. If the Council decides to increase or decrease the support given by 5%, it would either cost or make the Council an additional £366,649. The debt relating to the local council tax support schemes is now more than £2.5 million, as those on the scheme struggle to pay the reduced levels. The council says it's collecting some of the debt owed to it and will continue that work. A consultation was held earlier this year to gather feedback on the scheme, and of the 201 responses, 150 people disagreed with reducing the support to 65%. The majority of respondents to the survey were those on the scheme, and more than two-thirds said if the support was increased to a 75% discount, it would make their payments more affordable. The final decision to increase or decrease support will be made at the Isle of Wight Council's full meeting in January, ahead of the main budget-setting session. An exceptional hardship fund also exists within the council, which offers further help.
We now have news items and sport news. I'm John.
And I'm Madeline.
Low-income islanders can still get support. Eligible low-income island residents could still be given support to pay their council tax bills. The local council tax scheme has been running for more than 10 years and provides a 70% discount on their council tax bill, meaning residents pay the remaining 30%. The Isle of Wight Council has said this year has been the first where those receiving support have dropped below 10,000 people. The Council's Cabinet last week unanimously agreed to recommend keeping the level of support at the same. The Council says financial backing to the scheme comes from the government, but has reduced year on year, leaving the Island Authority with a bigger bill to foot. The debt relating to the local council tax support schemes is now more than £2.5 million, as those on the scheme struggle to pay the reduced levels. The council says it is collecting some of the debt owed to it and will continue that work. A consultation was held earlier this year to gather feedback on the scheme, and of the 201 responses, 152 people disagreed with reducing the support to 65%. The final decision on support will be made at the Isle of Wight Council's full meeting in January.
Luke still fighting after horror injury. Despite the bleak prospect of never being able to walk again following a horror rugby injury, Luke Orton is turning his tragedy into a positive. The world has been turned upside down since Luke broke his neck while playing a beach rugby match in the South Island Sevens at Apley in July. But his parents, Tony and Leslie of Alpine Road, Ventnor, gain strength knowing Luke remains positive as he considers his future. Luke's injury is life-changing. A broken C5 vertebrae with spinal fracture, which pressed onto his spinal cord, leaving him paralysed from the chest down without the use of his hands. Tears flowed as Tony and Leslie recounted what happened in Ryde, what Luke has gone through since, his bleak prognosis, and a sobering contemplation of what the future holds. They were spectators watching Luke play the sport he loved, but it turned on a sixpence in one freak moment. Leslie said, "I knew something wasn't right and ran to him. Luke couldn't feel anything. He was conscious but struggling to breathe, with no oxygen available to give him. We were frightened out of our wits. I won't ever forget him saying he heard his own neck break." He was transferred from St Mary's Hospital to Southampton General, where he spent 6 weeks in ICU. Following an emergency operation, Luke was transferred to Salisbury District Hospital Spinal Treatment Centre for rehabilitation. Luke works hard, is realistic and strong, with a positive attitude. But it's a long road ahead, said Tony. Luke's parents travel to Wiltshire 3 times a week, seeing gradual improvement, most notably with movement in his arms. Diagnosed as having sensory but no motor function, Luke was given a 20% chance of regaining functionality, with next to no chance of being able to walk again. He can't feel his fingers. He looks at them, willing them to move, to work, but they don't, said Leslie. He's only 26. That's the hardest part. Luke hopes to return home in the spring, with much to do to adapt the property to his needs, but it will cost at least £20,000. Tony has set up a Just Giving page to raise it via justgiving.com/crowdfunding/Luke's Home Fund. So far, £4,518 has been donated, alongside pledges from tradespeople who do work.
Bus cheer as £2 cap to roll into New Year. Islanders will still be able to get around for £2 on Isle of Wight buses next year, it has been confirmed, after the government agreed to extend its cap fare scheme. Those travelling with Southern Vectis can already benefit from cheaper fares. Following news earlier this year, the initiative was carrying on until the end of 2023. This will now continue until the end of 2024, Isle of Wight Member of Parliament Bob Seeley has told the county press. The bus firm submitted an application to extend the scheme on the island, which has now been accepted by the Department for Transport. After writing to then Transport Minister Richard Holden last month, Mr Seeley said he has now received confirmation. Mr Seeley said, quote, "The cheap fares enable more islanders to use the bus to get to work, attend appointments and visit friends and family, and they will run next year too. Several thousands more islanders are using the bus, and that includes me. I've been on it twice in the last fortnight. The scheme allows islanders to have fares capped at £2 for a single fare. It was also extended last month, October, until the end of this year."
Ball of Flames sinks boat as 2 escape. A boat sank and those on board had to be rescued after a big ball of flames engulfed the vessel off Sandown Bay on Saturday. 2 people had to be taken ashore after fire broke out. Islanders described the moment they saw a big ball of flames tear through the boat named Peroni. At around 10:20 a.m, calls were made to the emergency services when a plume of black smoke was spotted off the Ventnor and Bonchurch coast. A mayday call was made from the vessel and multiple 999 calls were made by eyewitnesses. The Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, MCA, confirmed that 2 people had been rescued. A MCA spokesperson said they escaped unharmed and the vessel sank. The MCA coordinated rescue efforts with a Coast Guard helicopter overhead, and the casualties were picked up by the Bembridge RNLI. Crews from Sandown and Shanklin Independent Lifeboat confirmed they were also standing by to monitor the fire and debris alongside Bembridge Coast Guard Rescue. The Coast Guard helicopter based at Lyon Solent was later stood down.
Murder trial hears of weapons at the ready by court reporter. The murder trial is underway at Winchester Crown Court following the death of cricketer Tommy Barton in May. Christopher Quinlan, prosecuting, said in the early hours of Sunday, May the 28th, the victim, Tommy Barton, stepped out of his father's car on Park Road in Ryde. Mr. Quinlan said Mr. Barton was intent on confrontation with one of the accused, Cameron Baker, who was in a property with Rio Scott. The court heard the pair were ready for Mr. Barton and stabbed him repeatedly in a joint-armed attack. Mr. Barton, staggering away, collapsed close by and died where he fell, said Mr. Quinlan. In police interview, Mr. Baker told officers he acted in self-defence, while Mr. Scott denied any involvement at all. Discussing the individuals who featured in the case, the main players, Mr. Quinlan said the victim lived in Brading and was an employee at Ryde restaurant Catch, where he had been working the day before he was killed. Mr. Quinlan introduced the witnesses in the case, including Mr. Barton's father, Mr. Barton's ex-girlfriend, Mr. Scott's girlfriend, her sister and her mother. Mr. Quinlan told the jury that Mr. Barton, 30, had seen the defendants with his ex-girlfriend, Sammy Creed, outside a bar in Ryde the previous evening. He said Miss Creed, who had split with Mr. Barton 2 months earlier, was holding Baker's hand, which she later told police was because he was drunk. The group went to a friend's house where Mr. Barton elbowed Baker in the head. The group later returned to Park Road, where Scott lived. Mr. Barton later arrived in the early hours of the morning in a car driven by his 84-year-old father, Peter Thomas. He banged on the door of Scott's home with his father's walking stick, but when there was no answer, Mr. Barton and his father drove away, only to return again a while later, the court heard. Mr. Quinlan said, "It seems clear Tommy Barton was ruminating, thinking about what had happened earlier and what he had seen and been told about Sammy and Cameron. He was not happy about what he perceived was the situation between Cameron Baker and Sammy Creed. He said Mr. Barton, who played cricket for clubs in Ryde, Ventnor and Lymington, intended to confront the defendants, but was then attacked by them and suffered multiple stab wounds. The attack was described as swift and brutal. Mr. Quinlan said that Mr. Barton's father said his son was looking for a fist fight and they just had the tools. Mr. Barton Sr. told police that he saw 2 big weapons, not little kitchen knives. He added, "I knew straight away he was dead or not going to survive." The trial continues and is expected to last approximately 10 days.
Ferry deal for future travel dates. Red Funnel's annual Black Friday sale is back again for another year, which offers island residents 1/3 off vehicle ferry travel. This sale runs from today, Friday, to Friday, December the 1st, allowing islanders to use their discounts for dates from now to December the 31st, 2024, except the Isle of Wight festival dates. There is no limit on the number of bookings customers can make during the Black Friday sale, with no minimum spend required. The offer applies to travel of any duration in any direction, including day returns, both long and short stays, and applies to all private vehicle bookings, including cars, minibuses, motorhomes, motorcycles, caravans, and other towed vehicles. Frank Collins, CEO at Red Funnel, said, "Our annual Black Friday is a fantastic chance for island residents to plan their away over the next year, whilst saving considerably if they book their tickets now. The sale also presents a great opportunity for us to engage with holiday makers from across the UK and get the Isle of Wight on the travel wish lists of people across the country, which will be fantastic as we continue to support the island economy."
Police ID cold call suspects. Police have confirmed they are aware and know the identities of 4 suspicious cold callers who have been causing concern in East Wight. Officers received a series of reports following cold callers knocking on people's doors on Tuesday. The males attending addresses were inquiring and attempting to purchase motorhomes parked outside people's homes. There were lots of concerns regarding their behaviour, said police, and this matter has been looked into by the North East Wight neighbourhood team. Following inquiries, 4 names have been identified, along with the vehicles they were driving. PC Beeson confirmed, "We know who they were and where they are from. So far, there have been no crimes conducted nor identified. However, we are aware of the situation and the concerns you had as a community. As it stands, there are no current concerns or risks identified to the community at large. Trading standards and follow-up checks will be made to ensure the protection of you all. Police suggest islanders stay vigilant, look out for each other, and continue to report suspicious behaviour."
Big upgrade plans for busy arts centre. Plans are being submitted to upgrade the facilities at Shanklin Performing Arts Centre to include a bar, museum and heritage space. When Shanklin Library was relocated from Victoria Avenue to Falcon Cross, the property was initially leased and subsequently purchased by the Shanklin Theatre and Community Trust to be used as a performing arts centre. The project has been such a success that demand to use the facility now far outstrips the time slots available. Various user groups use the centre, the likes of Keep Fit classes, Pilates, ballet, burlesque, dance and theatre groups, but the building is in a poor state of repair and requires substantial upgrades. The Trust intends to submit a planning application to upgrade the facilities to include multi-purpose studios, a performing space with retractable seating, coffee shop bar area, and a museum and heritage space to present and display the history of Shanklin. The plans for the new facility include 3 dance and practice studios, storerooms, kitchen and toilets on the lower floor. The ground floor will comprise of a performance stage and auditorium with a retractable seating system to accommodate 106 people. dressing room, toilets, bar and a level floor foyer entrance which can be accessed from Victoria Avenue. 2 areas on the upper floor will accommodate large spaces for museum and heritage centres. The new building will also benefit from solar roof panels, generating electricity to power internal battery storage units, and a rain harvesting system to assist in the reduction of untreated stormwater release into the sea. A local resident consultation and open day was held at the centre on September the 22nd, displaying the Trust's proposed plans. They have now gone through the pre-planning application process with the Isle of Wight Council planning officers. The Trust is also hosting an exhibition on Sunday, November the 19th, from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m, where visitors can find out more about the proposal and tuck into refreshments.
New double-decker Ferraris unveiled. New £290,000 double-decker buses with digital wing mirrors and stop buttons on the back of more comfortable seats have arrived on the Isle of Wight. Southern Vectis has unveiled its new fleet of double-decker Ferraris, that's a quote, to serve the Cowes to Newport Route 1 service. There are 7 altogether. 3 have arrived on the island already, and the remaining 4 are due over the next few days. At a launch event in Newport, Andrew Wickham, Managing Director of Southern Vectis, told the county press, "We're really pleased with them, they're state-of-the-art. We have a new seat type on them, which are more comfortable than the previous seats, and they have the camera monitor systems, which are a lot safer for our drivers." Andrew said the buses are like a TARDIS in that they look bigger on the inside than they are on the outside. Upstairs, all hand poles have been removed, with handles and stop buttons now placed on the back. Wing mirrors on the either side of the buses have been replaced with cameras, and drivers now have digital screens to look at instead. With each bus costing around £290,000, the company has forked out around £2 million, but Andrew said they will be worth the money. He said, quote, "We're talking Ferrari money. Having said that, you can only get about 2 people in a Ferrari, and you can get about 90 people on here, so perhaps they're not such bad value for money in any case. Double-decker Ferraris, not quite as fast, but probably quite a bit more comfortable." Andrew is encouraging islanders to catch a bus to help reduce carbon emissions and to make use of the government's £2 fare cap.
1.2 million ransack boy sentenced. The devastated mother of the youngest member of a gang of vandals which turned a Grade 2 listed home into a war zone told a court she is trying to teach her son right from wrong. The then 12-year-old was one of the 7 youngsters who ransacked the 1.2 million house owned by artist Joanna Pittard and her husband Matt. Over a month-long spree of destruction while the family were away, the youths caused more than £200,000 of damage to the property with chainsaws, axes and sledgehammers, making it uninhabitable. They damaged a wrought iron chandelier, flipped over antique furniture, chopped down a palm tree, and even destroyed the homeowner's beloved wedding dress. The homeowner found soiled toilet paper, a children's toy with stab marks and graffiti. The schoolboy now said he was really sorry to the Pittards for the reckless damage he had helped cause, while his mother said he has made changes to his life. Oscar Vincent, defending, said the boy admitted to being at the property on 2 occasions in June last year, smashing a window with a hammer. Mr. Vincent said the youth was being encouraged by the older boys, and by the time he had arrived at the property, much of the damage had already been done. During a court case last month, the boy and the other 6 perpetrators, aged between 13 and 16, admitted criminal damage. The homeowner said they will never recover financially or emotionally from the crime, and said she started making notes of the damage but had to stop as it kept going on and on. Sentencing the youth, Magistrate Hext said, as this was a joint offence, everyone involved was equally liable. He said, "I have no words to adequately describe the horrendous damage to the house and the life-changing impact it has on the Pittard family. You can move on, I'm not sure they ever will." The boy received the same sentence as the other perpetrators, which was a 12-month referral order and to pay £1,500 compensation.
Grants of up to £2,500 for victims of flooding. Isle of Wight residents directly affected by devastating flooding can now apply for relief funding. The Isle of Wight Council is administering a package of government support, including a community recovery grant of £500 per household to help with immediate costs. Community recovery grant. The grant is available to primary homes that have suffered internal flood damage, or for people who were not able to live in their property as a direct result of Storm Babette between October 19th and 25th. Second homes and empty properties are not eligible. Small to medium-sized businesses in affected areas are eligible for up to £2,500 to help them return quickly to business as usual. Businesses eligible to apply include those which experience flooding to their business premises and or those which experience restricted access to their premises as a result of the flood, and which experienced a loss of trade as a result. Storage facilities are not eligible.
2 by-election hopefuls. A by-election will be held just days before Christmas to fill a gap on the Isle of Wight Council, and 2 candidates have already thrown their hat into the ring. It follows the October resignation of Ventnor and St Lawrence councillor Gary Peace. The Isle of Wight Council has this week announced the by-election will be held on December the 21st. The first candidate to come forward for the Conservatives is local businessman and operator of Ventnor Haven Management, Ed Blake. Hoping to fill the former Tory seat, Mr Blake said he believes the ward needs a councillor who has lived there for their whole life, understands the priorities of local people, and who can be a strong and effective voice on their behalf. Ventnor Mayor Steve Cooper is hoping it is 3rd time lucky for himself and the Labour Party, having previously stood for the position in 2017 and 2021. Mr Cooper said the ward needed strong representation at County Hall, and it would be driven by community needs and business support to reinvigorate the town, with the focus on residents and the vulnerable.
The Day Elephants Went to the Beach by Laurie Little. It's difficult to imagine this happening today, of course, but in the 1980s, elephants were spotted on Sandown Beach. The circus came to town, and the huge animals were part of the Big Top entertainment. The late Ken Chiverton, who lived in the town, took photographs of the elephants being taken for a dip in the sea. His son, Rob Chiverton, has kindly shared them with us. Rob posted them on Facebook this week saying, quote, "No dogs on the beach maybe, but it doesn't say anything about elephants. Good job they remembered to bring their swimming trunks." Photos taken by his dad were taken at Yaverland around the 1980s. Sandown Beach was no stranger to unusual sights. Owner of the zoo over the road was Jack Corney, who used to walk tigers along the sand.
Top Island Honours. 2 island organisations are among the winners of King's Awards for Voluntary Service, awarded annually to some of the UK's most inspiring volunteer-led groups. Sandown and Shanklin Independent Lifeboat has been awarded for alleviating suffering, saving lives and promoting safety at sea in Sandown Bay and South Wight. The Isle of Wight Literary Festival was recognised for promoting literature to enhance education and the cultural life and well-being of the island community. They are among 227 organisations in England awarded the first ever King's Award for Voluntary Service, the highest award given to local volunteer groups, in recognition of their outstanding community service. Formerly known as the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service, the award was established in 2002 to celebrate Queen Elizabeth II's Golden Jubilee. It was announced in February 2023 that the award would become the King's Award. It is equivalent to an MBE and is the highest honour awarded to voluntary groups.
Setback for owners of Eyesore Hotel by a court reporter. The saga over the derelict and arson-hit Ocean Hotel in Sandown has seen an appeal by its former owners rejected in court. They must now pay more than £5,000 towards the Isle of Wight Council's legal costs. In February 2022, the Isle of Wight Council issued a Section 215 order to force Durham-based Phoenix Commercial Property Development, PCPD, to tidy up the hotel on the Esplanade. The local authorities said the building's appearance significantly harmed both the land around it and the town itself. It set out 15 actions which PCPD was required to comply with by July 11th, including repairing fencing, removing greenery and cleaning the property. Within months, PCPD appealed, but magistrates later dismissed the case because they said the owners had failed to meet deadlines set by the court and cited a lack of communication with the Isle of Wight Council. With the appeal dismissed, the countdown to clean the building up resumed, and magistrates ordered PCPD to pay £2,000 towards the council's legal costs. A second appeal was launched at Durham Crown Court challenging the Isle of Wight magistrate's July decision. It forced a hold on the clean-up work at the site. Appearing at the Isle of Wight Crown Court via video link last Friday was Stephen Purvis, 41, of Ferry Hill, County Durham, the former director-turned-contractor of PCPD. He retired from his position in 2022, and thus there was a question over whether he had any decision-making capacity. Judge Richard Shepherd also raised concerns about a lack of confirmation of the delegation of authority from Company Director Anna Durf to Mr. Purvis. Judge Shepherd said he had a, quote, raised eyebrow, unquote, on the subject of Miss Durf's signatures on documentation, describing them as remarkably similar, which cast doubt on the document's validity. A key witness did not appear. Mr. Purvis declined to give evidence, and his barrister withdrew from proceedings. Edward Elton, representing the Isle of Wight Council, picked apart the grounds for appeal. Judge Shepherd said PCPD had every opportunity to prepare its case. He rejected the appeal. and PCPD was ordered to pay costs of £5,940.91. PCPD has 5 months to carry out the work.
Dog alert after floating terror find. There is a warning to dog owners after what's believed to be a beautiful but deadly Portuguese man-of-war washed up on an Isle of Wight beach. Natasha Luscombe from Lake was walking her Pomeranian named Morphy last Wednesday when she made the discovery. She had just let Morphy off his leash when he started sniffing something out. "I saw it and thought it was a toy," she said. After recognising what it was, Natasha, a nurse at St Mary's Hospital, put Morphy back on his leash. As she was heading to her car, she made other dog owners aware of the discovery and later posted images on Facebook. Although the painful sting of a Portuguese man-of-war, also known as floating terror, can be fatal to humans, it is rare. It is more common for them to cause welts on exposed skin. They can still sting weeks after washing ashore. They are rare to UK waters, but if they are spotted, it is usually between September and December.
High Street store closing. A national clothing retailer has confirmed it is to shut its Ryde shop. Closing down signs have appeared in the windows of Mountain Warehouse. The county press has been told the store will close by Christmas. Mountain Warehouse moved into 168 High Street in 2018. Before that, the building had been empty for 8 years. It used to home discount stores, Beeman's and Quids Inn. The clothing retailer also has a store in Newport, having moved into the former Co-op site on Pyle Street last year. It had previously been on Newport High Street, where it was based for 12 years.
Report reveals flood team arrived too late. Environment Agency, EA, contractors responsible for putting floodboards in at Ryde Simeon Recreation Ground did not get back in time to install all of them after being sent to another incident in Newport, a report into last month's devastation has revealed. However, a review published by the EA and seen by the county press said it is still unclear whether flooding to properties was made worse by only installing 2 of the 6 boards. A more detailed review is now required, it added. It comes after angry residents of the Strand called for someone to pay after flooding wrecked their homes. It is estimated more than 100 properties in the area were affected in the Monkton Mead area of Ryde on October the 25th. Councillor leader, Councillor Phil Jordan, said failure to close the Simeon Park gates in good time added to the problems. The report has revealed that, on the day, 2 floodboards were installed at Simeon Rec by 5:45 a.m. The EA said the material consideration for only installing 2 was surface water building up outside the wreck. On previous occasions, the boards have had to be lifted to allow the surface water to come in. However, once all boards are locked in place, it is much harder to remove them, the report said. After installing 2 boards, the EA duty officer instructed the contractors to assist with flooding at Honeyhill, Newport. It was planned for them to head there and then come back to put the rest of the boards in, should they be needed, the report states. But the EA did not anticipate the significant disruption to travel links caused by heavy rainfall. Impassable roads meant contractors were unable to reach Ryde again until 8:30 a.m. By this time, the box which holds the boards was submerged in water, and it was too late to put them in. The EA report states that a second standby gang had been requested but was not yet available. It said the rainfall event, the worst in Ryde since 1949, was unprecedented. Going forward, the EA said it will work alongside the Isle of Wight Council, which is coordinating a Section 19 flood report. This should lead to local improvements in how events are managed to provide better resilience to the local community to fluvial and surface water events, it said.
Shocking stats revealed by Oliver Dyer. It's okay to talk and it's okay to reach out, young people on the Isle of Wight are being reminded, after shocking figures revealed a third have thought about ending their own lives. Worrying statistics from the Isle of Wight Youth Trust's latest mental health census also show 1 in 10 of those surveyed have made an attempt to take their own lives. The charity quizzed 1,223 children and young people aged between 11 and 25. Although responses show some young people are feeling better, results have not returned to pre-pandemic levels. CEO of the Trust, Joe Dare, admits there is a heck of a mountain to climb, but says she is confident the lives of young people can be improved on a step-by-step, case-by-case basis. Of those who took part, 30% admitted to deliberately harming themselves without intending to end their own life. And the number of people feeling angry at themselves, the world, or things around them stands at 71%, a 3% rise when compared to 2021. Megan Ayres, clinical lead at the charity, said, "Post-pandemic, I think children are really struggling and feeling quite confused." Meanwhile, 53% of those quizzed said they had been bullied. If part of the LGBTQAI+ community, that figure rose to 72%. Being different isn't easy, Joe said. People are telling us the bullying is more face-to-face than online. I think where online gets difficult is you can't escape from it. If you've been bullied at school, you go home and look at your phone and it continues. There are some reasons for optimism, however, with 76% of residents saying they do feel positive about their future. Megan said, "It's okay to talk, it's okay to reach out. It's a tough world for young people, they need support." The charity offers referrals for children and young people aged from 5 up to 25. Depending on the type of help needed, this could include one-to-one counselling or small group sessions.
£500 in prizes up for grabs. The staff at the County Press have been excited to receive so many entries for our Christmas giveaway. We have a whopping £500 worth of prizes to be won, including a £200 supermarket trolley dash. All you have to do is fill out the coupon and get it to us at our office in Pyle Street for a chance to win. We will have the coupon in the paper for 3 weeks, including last week and this week, and there's no limit on how many times you can enter, although it must be an original coupon, not a photocopy. We are looking forward to dishing out the prizes, which include luxury treats such as extravagant Waitrose Christmas puddings, premium Christmas cakes from Marks and Spencer's, and champagne to celebrate the new year. This is a huge thank you from us to you as we go into the Christmas season. We also have a competition to design a Christmas bauble for our tree at Bryston Christmas Tree Festival.
Park King Kong Bid by Louise Hill. A high ropes course, climbing wall and bungee trampolines are all among major plans for a holiday park looking to upgrade its facilities. Parkdean Resorts Lower Hyde Holiday Park in Shanklin is hoping to meet the future needs of visitors by providing more exciting activities for its guests and improving current facilities. In plans submitted to the Isle of Wight Council, the National Holiday Resort Company would like to add new attractions, including a King Kong climbing wall, adventure and junior play equipment, bungee trampolines, kart and bike hire facilities, a high ropes course and zip wire, adventure golf course, a Shades of Comfort hospitality enclosure, multi-use games area and an arts and crafts den. Food and drink will include a bar, a pizza bar and a fish and chippery. There will be outside covered seating and an outdoor entertainment stage. Works are also proposed to the existing entertainment complex and could see the swimming pool, show bar, kitchen and shop extended with a raised seating area added. The former housekeeping building could be repurposed to provide an ice cream and coffee outlet, office, briefing room and storage spaces. Overall, planning documents say the proposals are seeking to enhance entertainment, activity and leisure facilities for all holiday park guests, while looking to meet the demand for high-quality holiday accommodation. It is hoped the improvement will encourage more guests to the holiday park and in turn more visitors to the island. 21 single-storey holiday chalets could also be demolished, making way for the bases of 8 new and improved static caravans to improve accommodation types. Permission had previously been granted 2 years ago for outdoor upgrades at the park, but had not been started yet. You can view the plans 23/01878/FUL on the Isle of Wight Council's planning register. Comments can be submitted until December the 8th.
And now we have a Wight memory. Remarkable veteran shares his warts and all war stories. A captivated audience were left fascinated by a first-hand account of the Second World War experiences of Shanklin Royal Navy veteran Alec Penstone at the Museum of Ryde last week. Alec, 98, recently saw the publication of his autobiography entitled My 10.5 Arctic Convoys, with a companion DVD available. He took part in the march past at the Cenotaph in London for the first time on Sunday. The Arctic Convoys veteran recounted his early life and days at the beginning of the war, from when he started work at the age of 14 and living in Tottenham when war was declared. It was at that time Alec immediately volunteered as an air raid precaution ARP warden. That was the prelude to a fascinating life of adventure, risk, luck and survival. Alec's memory is phenomenal, with tales of he recalled in the short time we had with him, which portrayed his stoic attitude to what was faced with, said Bob Cooper, who attended the talk. Stories of his first ventures in the Navy and being sent to Scotland to join the fleet that would deliver supplies to the Russian forces in the Arctic were, to us today, harrowing. The Arctic Convoys was a monumental aid effort, mounted by the Allies, through one of the most perilous theatres of the war. Supplies were transported to Russia by sea, carried by the merchant navy, who would be escorted by warships and provided with air cover. The route chosen was the most direct, but also the most dangerous. It took the ships very close to the northern coast of Norway, which was occupied by Germans and patrolled by aircraft, surface vessels and U-boats. Ryde Historic Society Chairman Brian Harris said, "For Alec to come and support the Museum of Ryde and give us an insight into life during those years is greatly appreciated, reinforcing the history the museum has of exhibits of life in Ryde in the past. With so many more insights Alec has, we hope to have him talk to us again in the new year."
Opinion by Josh Barry. My incredible day on Cowes Parade. On July the 10th, Cowes Parade came to a standstill as Radio 1's giant DJ hunt came to an elaborate climax in front of dozens of radio fans who braved the traditional British summer weather. As soon as I got wind that the station had come over to the island, I took my sound equipment and business cards in the hope of securing some big star names on my podcast Beyond the Title. The irrepressible Greg James has forever been on my bucket list of dream guests. Since I started Beyond the Title back in 2016, yet has forever escaped my radar. Therefore standing, or in my case sitting, just a few metres from him, this was my moment to ask the all-important question podcast. As I sat and watched the radio broadcast unfold, I was taken back to my childhood in 1995, when Channel 4's Big Breakfast took their all-star roadshow Eggs on Legs to Cowes Yacht Haven for an early morning entertainment extravaganza hosted by Danny Minogue and Richard Orford. It was here I discovered that being disabled has its perks, as we were invited into the backstage area to watch the proceedings from probably the best place in the marina. It's hard to say all these years later, but I wonder if this experience further ignited my passion for entertainment, which I built upon throughout the succeeding years. Therefore, there was a certain synergy as I watched yet another entertainment roadshow in Cowes over a quarter of a century since the last. I was fascinated by all the elements that went into keeping the show on air on somewhat of a remote location of Cowes Parade. The Radio 1 outside broadcast truck had been sat on the parade since the start of the week without any real fuss made of it, but now it was right at the very heart of the climax of the station's giant DJ hunt. To think that the parade, the place where I grew up, was now the location of a nationwide broadcasting feat was just amazing, and to be present for such an occasion really blew my mind. To be able to watch a live radio show unfold on your doorstep was a real thrill for me as someone who remains passionate about the world of broadcasting, and there was never any doubt that I was going to stay until the very end. After the broadcast had finished, I waited along with dozens of avid listeners to get a few moments with Mr. James himself, as I figured that having waited this long, it would be a shame not to ask him to appear on the podcast, and to my utter delight he agreed. And so, in the first week of December, my guest on Beyond the Title shall be the evergreen Greg James, and all because of this incredible day on Cowes Parade. Thank you, Isle of Wight, I owe you one.
A Vectis View from Mark Birch, coxswain of Sandown and Shanklin Independent Lifeboats. This has been a very proud week for the crew of Sandown and Shanklin Independent Lifeboat, as we received the King's Award for Voluntary Service. However, like many people on the island, we are still dealing with the aftermath of Storm Ciarán, which badly damaged our headquarters on the revetment, as well as the ongoing threat of cliff falls. As an islander, I'm privileged to have led the 25-person crew, alongside countless volunteers, trustees and fundraisers, for more than 30 years. We are responsible for the area between Bembridge Ledge to St Catherine's Point, and sometimes beyond, responding to around 40 emergency call-outs every year. Like the other voluntary lifeboat organisations on the island, such as at Freshwater and Ryde, we are 3 out of 55 in the country, we have to fundraise for our boats, currently Dove 2, all training and all equipment, including a tractor stored at our base, and we are grateful for the generous support of the public. Historically, Dove 1 was funded by Sunday school teachers concerned about the loss of life with the sinking of HMS Eurydice, launched on June the 29th, 1868. Eurydice was a fast 26-gun frigate which was located in the bay in 1885, then served along the south coast until she sank on November the 5th, 1916, with memorials at Christchurch and Shanklin Cemetery. The current service was reformed 50 years ago in the 1970s, and we can be seen at community events, including local regattas, the annual peer-to-peer swim, and Christmas and New Year fundraising dips, alongside our emergency roles. As volunteers, we all juggle our day jobs with an on-call rota, aiming to be in the sea within 6 minutes of a call, with a minimum crew of 3 on board and other members of the team at base. Increasingly, we are mindful of the ever-growing training needs of all members, future-proofing our leadership team and ensuring support for those involved in serious incidents. Over the years, included during the COVID pandemic, we have been called to incidents at the base of Culver Cliff, when access can only be achieved by sea, and potential loss of life is a factor when we respond to a call. Although not everyday occurrences, all crew members have to be prepared, with only minutes' notice to leave their day job and become an emergency responder, often in turbulent and hostile waters, to rescue someone at risk of drowning or injury. Often naive walkers get in trouble at Luckham or Yaverland, and we are called out to help, working with other emergency services. Sometimes it's vessels in the bay, not knowing about the local coastal conditions. We often respond without knowing the full circumstances until we are in the water, so we get to the scene as fast as possible. Crew members are regularly recognised nationally by the award of Royal Life Saving Long Service Awards, as well as locally by councils such as Sandown Town Council and partner agencies such as the Sandown Lifeguards, who help support our operation and allow us to get on with our jobs. Like any organisation, especially those on the island, the King's Award for Voluntary Service, and previously the Queen's Award, does highlight the standard of service we all provide and demonstrates that the island punches above its weight, benefiting residents and visitors alike. Thank you to everyone who has supported our nomination, supported the operation of the service, and most importantly, to each and every one of the present and past crews that I have had the privilege to have been a member of and now lead. This award recognises the difference, often vital, that we make.
And now we have public information items. It's important to step out of the County Hall bubble by Councillor Phil Jordan, leader of the Isle of Wight Council. Ever heard of the County Hall bubble? Well, so have I. In fact, not only heard about it, I'm in it. It really is a tricky situation to be in, because as councillors we all work in this organisation which has its own sets of rules, its own method of working, its stresses and strains of trying to deliver services for our island community, and a range of checks and balances that go on during any decision-making process. Often the public are not exposed or aware of these things, and quite rightly just want the council to get on and deliver better outcomes and better services. I'm very aware of that whilst working in the bubble, and try to remember why we are there as councillors, especially when we're making decisions that impact and affect people's lives. Stepping outside the bubble helps to focus on what is important, and I hear from lots of our residents just what is important to them and our communities. I never forget our residents' comments, and through them I can and do formulate what we want the council to do for us all, given the financial constraints we have been under for so long now. An island fairer funding formula and award that gives our island the money it needs to stop the ongoing cuts and helps to pay for the important things we need is near the top of my agenda. Lots of work has gone on, and I met with the Minister some weeks ago when he visited to try to persuade him of our need for extra funding. Government seems to accept the island has a case, but also seems unable to work out how much money we do need. Rest assured, I and our team have given government our estimate, and we now await any settlement, which usually arrives mid to late December. Let us hope Christmas arrives this year with a real financial festive cheer. I'm also determined to make sure no families live in temporary accommodation, or even worse, are staying in short-term bed and breakfast accommodation. This cannot be what our island wants, and many people tell me so. Currently we have over 200 families living in temporary accommodation, and it's my determination to put in place measures that will reduce that down to zero over the shortest time frame possible. Details will emerge over the coming weeks as we consider the annual budget, which gets set in February. We must also address the difficult problem of providing affordable homes for islanders, and finding a way to do that so local need is met first and foremost, and homes are truly island affordable. It is a difficult problem to solve, but it is one I am committed to finding the answer to. I will write again soon with how we are progressing on this especially critical issue.
Don't be a scam victim after this bad weather. From Sally Ash, Isle of Wight Against Scams Partnership. The current bad weather doesn't appear to have prevented rogue traders from targeting the island. In fact, trading standards are seeing increased reports from this time of the year. Whether it's somebody offering to clean or tarmac your drive, landscape your garden, cut down a tree, or fix a dodgy roof tile, the message is always the same. Never engage with somebody on your doorstep offering to carry out work for you. These will never be genuine traders and may leave your home in a worse state than when they started. If you need work carried out on your property, then do the following. Use a recommendation from a friend or family. Contact somebody on the Isle of Wight Council Trader Approval Scheme. Get more than one quote and don't necessarily go for the cheapest. Always make sure you get the trader's full name and address. You will need this information if anything goes wrong and you need to pursue them in court. Be wary of using schemes for companies that match you with a trader. You can post an advert on their site and the traders respond. These generally don't carry out any vetting procedure and won't do anything if an issue arises. Anyone skilled or not can respond to your request. These are not trader approval schemes. Use a no cold calling sticker available from Trading Standards at isleofwight.gov.uk. For advice on scams, call Citizens Advice Consumer Helpline on 0808 250 5050.
We now have What's On. IT help sessions. Age UK volunteers will be on hand at Ryde Library on Wednesday to help you with problems you may have with electronic devices. Remember to bring your device with you. The session runs from 10:30 a.m. to midday.
Breathing and vocal exercises. Annalisa's will be hosting breathing and vocal exercise classes at the Depository in Ryde on Monday, that's November the 20th, from 11 o'clock. No singing skills are required. The classes run as a course of 6 sessions for £30, or you can book single sessions for £6.45. You can book by phoning Annalisa on 07757 965 339 and paying cash on arrival or online via isleofwight.life/vocal exercise.
Are you aware of our charities shop? It's called Dress for Less, and it's at 57 Pyle Street, Newport. Every penny raised by this shop supports our charity, the island's oldest charity, which helps people to live safely, independently and confidently. The shop sells immaculate pre-loved ladies' clothes and accessories.
Weekly chess. On Tuesday there is a weekly chess club for all ages held between 2 p.m. and 5 at Cowes Library. Go and play or learn from others, supported by Chess in Schools and Communities. All children must be accompanied by an adult at all times. For more information, contact the library on 293341.
Medina Tattoo returns. An afternoon of inspiring entertainment returns to Medina Theatre later this month. White Hot Pipes is hosting its traditional Medina Tattoo. This year's event will raise money for charity Aspire Ride. Audience members will be treated to the sound of pipes and drums from Rose and Thistle and Isle of Wight Pipe Band, as well as traditional brass band from Abbey Brass. Also on show will be The Crew, the Vintage Songbird, and pianist and comedian Matt Black. Medina Tattoo is being held at Medina Theatre on Sunday, November 26. Tickets cost £12 and can be bought by calling the theatre on 01983 823 884.
Hot lunch. A hot lunch will be served at the next Ventnor R Place meeting on Thursday, November the 23rd at St Catherine's Church between 10:30 a.m. and 1:30 p.m, with local organisations present to offer help and advice. Call 07932 890679 or email tony@ventnortowncouncil.org.uk.
There will be a West White Christmas Day community lunch for people on their own. It will be held on Christmas Day at the Holy Family Centre next to St Saviour's Church, Totland, between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. Tickets are £5. Booking is essential on 759662. Transport is available locally to be booked in advance on the same contact number.
At Shanklin Theatre in November and December. On Thursday the 23rd of November to Saturday the 25th of November, there is Nativity the Musical. On Tuesday the 28th and Wednesday the 29th of November at 6:30, the first act Peter Pan. On Friday the 1st of December at 7:30, Talon. And Sunday the 3rd of December at 6:30, Spotlight Isle of Wight Limited. On Thursday the 7th of December at 7:30, Big Girls Don't Cry. And on Saturday the 9th to Sunday the 10th of December, Theatre Train Aladdin. And these can be booked, the tickets can be booked at the box office on 01983 868 000.
There will be wrestling at Medina Theatre on Saturday 25th of November at 7 p.m. Contact number 01983 823 884.
There'll be an afternoon nature talk. There is a talk in the West Chapel at Northwood Cemetery on Thursday from 2 p.m. by Graham Biss about local charity Gift to Nature. The talk is hosted by the Friends of Northwood Cemetery.
Arabic film showing. The Ventnor Film Society are playing the movie Under the Fig Trees on Tuesday next from 7:30 p.m. It's certificate 12A and is 1 hour 32 minutes long. It's in Arabic but has English subtitles. Cost is £6 on the door, cash only. To book, email ventnorfilmsociety@hotmail.com.
And now for some letters. Recycling Has-Beens from Jane Burton in Rookley. It is not often I am left completely speechless, but I was the other day. Rishi Sunak had just announced he was appointing Dodgy Dave as Foreign Secretary. And who was first out of the blocks? Yes, you guessed, Tony Blair. The Guardian newspaper revealed that the former British Prime Minister had let it be known that he is available if needed to help in an effort to end the growing crisis in Israel and Palestine. His spokesman said, "As you know, Mr. Blair has an office in Israel and has continued to work on issues regarding Israel and the Palestinians." Well, that been going well, hasn't it, Tony? Sadly, some people are so thick-skinned and deluded they simply refuse to recognise that they are a national embarrassment and an indelible stain on the country's collective consciousness. Many believe Tony Blair, the man who lied to the whole world about weapons of mass destruction, should be serving time for war crimes. But as we all know, there is a very special place in British politics for politicians of his ilk, the House of Lords. And we wonder why our country and world is in such a mess.
Traffic lights explanation from Steve Ashman, Ireland Road Service Director. Your correspondent, John Craddock, asked for an explanation of recent traffic lights on Afton Road, Freshwater. That was Letters, County Press, 10th of November. These traffic lights were in place at the request of Southern Water. They were part of that company's emergency response to the recent flooding, and their purpose was to set aside space, if required, for a water bowser to ensure local supplies could be maintained. The location is adjacent to a water hydrant. In the event, the bowser was, thankfully, not needed, and as the threat to supply receded, the lights were removed. By way of background, any public utility company has a legal right to work on the highway in order to maintain and improve their infrastructure. Ireland Roads has no power to prevent these works, nor in circumstances such as these would we seek to do so. Our role is to liaise with companies to try to reduce the impact of works on the travelling public. Sadly, given the nature of the island's network, it is not always possible to avoid some disruption despite our best efforts. People, quite rightly, expect to receive uninterrupted and improved supplies of the utilities and broadband on which they rely. The price of that can, unfortunately, be some inconvenience. I hope this information offers some reassurance to your correspondent. Our website, www.islandroads.com, carries more information about third-party work on the network and the extent of Island Road's role in administering those.
Still no sign of missing postbox from Richard de Kerbrek at Gurnard. Who'd have thought that in the first quarter of the 21st century a postbox could disappear without trace? Well, that's precisely what happened last December at Gurnard, at the junction between Cockleton Lane and the Gurnard Pines entrance. It not so much disappeared as it was taken away by a man in a van. When challenged by a local resident who witnessed its removal, he said that he was taking it away. This begs the question, was he a bona fide postbox collector or a collector of postboxes? The village elders were fast on the case, and back in May they were reassured by Royal Mail that it would be returned, but it still hasn't been. Upon independent research by the writer to find out about its whereabouts, one was routed to an extension within the Royal Mail Labyrinthine organisation that did not reply, vaguely reminiscent of the old TV advert which depicted the Carlsberg Complaints Office, where the phone kept ringing in a vacant, dusty old room. Ironically, around January or February, the postbox outside the Riverside Centre at Newport was removed for repair, but very recently the wall still looks bare, where it has not been returned. Meanwhile, back at Gurnard, the concrete post looks forlorn, mourning the loss of its red-painted cuboid companion, a lonely obelisk, a victim of non-communication from Royal Mail. Will Royal Mail ever return it before the Christmas rush, or has it been gone forever, condemned prematurely to the postbox graveyard?
Lasting tribute in memory of John from Jenny Baldwin of Totland Bay. My husband and I were members of Christ Church at Totland for many years. Unfortunately, after only a short illness, John passed away in April 2022, and I wanted to get a lasting memory of him to go to Christ Church. After more than a year, I had the idea of buying a defibrillator to be fixed to the side wall of Christ Church. One of the church wardens, Jeff Kirk, organised everything, and all I had to do was pay for the machine. The defibrillator is now up and can be seen from many places. Also, there is a plaque up saying it is in memory of John Baldwin, who was well known in the West White. P.S. I honestly enjoy reading the county press from page to page every week, so thank you for continuing to print such a lovely newspaper.
Flood Farce at Morton Common by Nip Wade of St Helens. Can someone tell me how much longer we have to put up with the farce of the flooding at Morton Common? There is a simple solution to this problem, and that is to clear the reeds and dredge the silt in the eastern Yar between Morton Common and the sluice gates at St Helens Quay. As these gates only open at low tide, the faster the river flows, the more of the floodwater will be emptied into the sea. Back in the 1960s, the dredging was done by the then River Catchment Board, who had 2 tracked drag lines which they used all over the island, clearing the reeds and the silt wherever it was required to increase the flow. This no longer happens, so the problem is only going to get worse. They also employed a good friend of mine to walk the riverbanks from Ducker's Wall, Brading, to the sluice gates at St Helens daily to clear away any debris that could obstruct the flow.
Have they learnt lessons? From J. Robinson of Ryde. Dear Editor, I was interested to read your report last week of the meeting about the flooding in Ryde. The Environment Agency put up only 2 slats of their 5 slatted flood defences at the Simeon Street wreck during the heavy rains on October 25th, because, they said, they feared surface water flooding. Can you ask them to explain why this week, during heavy rain, they installed the slats as a, quote, preventative measure, unquote? Are they learning the lessons of the past few weeks or trying to avoid legal action? It would be good to know.
And that's all we've got time for today, so it's goodbye from Madeline.
And it's goodbye from John, wishing you a pleasant weekend.
The BBC In Touch programme follows. There's no scaffolding news this week.
Vectis Radio, FM 104.6, the heart of the island's community.
I've brought my colleague Sam along today, who's going to do most of the talking. So Sam's going to talk to you about
the IT accessibility suite and the talking news service that Sight for White provides.
All right.
Okay. And this is at your headquarters, I presume?
Yeah, this is at Millbrook House every Monday, 9:30 until 12:30.
Right.
It is appointment only, so please do give us a call.
Okay, so what sort of things can you do there?
So with the IT accessibility suite, we must stress it's not how to use a laptop or PC for the first time. It's for people that can use computers who may be visually or hearing impaired,
right,
and that are struggling with the computers. So we've got access to Windows laptops, and basically I can show them through all the accessibility features which are available for visually and hearing impaired people.
Oh, right.
To make their lives a lot easier, because a lot of people don't know, if they can't see something on PCs, they generally kind of just write it off that's now closed to them and they can't use a PC anymore, where in fact there's a lot of little tricks involved where there's lots of magnification features, there's lots of inverted colour options, even down to things as you can make the mouse pointer bigger.
Right.
Just simple little tricks that can help people get along. And the IT suite also covers mobile phones as well, because there's a lot of features on mobile phones to help people along. Once again, it's people visually or hearing impaired may think that the door's closed to them when it comes to a mobile phone, but with a few clicks of a few buttons, it can dramatically change how the phone looks.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that's interesting, because most mobile phones these days have got a completely smooth screen with no visible or tactile buttons at all.
No, that's it. There's virtually very few buttons on mobile phones anymore, but there are very little clever ways where you can enlarge icons or whatever you're doing on your phone. You can simply zoom in on certain areas. Applications do allow you to zoom in on certain bits and pieces, but with the actual phone software, it allows you to zoom in on anything that's on your screen.
Right,
wow.
That's worth knowing.
That's useful, isn't it? Very useful.
So, are these free of charge, these sessions?
They are. So if you do, just give us a call, make an appointment, just so that I know that there's people on the way. Obviously, spaces are limited because we've only got a certain amount of laptops. So give us a call, we'll get you booked in, and then you can come along, like I say, every Monday morning from 9:30 until 12:30.
And people are there for 3 hours, are they, or just half an hour, or however long it takes? However
long it takes, really. So when people turn up with a mobile phone question, I had a couple yesterday, and they were bordering on buying a brand new phone, at considerable expense, but after a few little tips and tricks and in putting an app on the phone, they no longer needed to do it.
That's good.
Good.
So yeah, some people are there for a couple of hours, some people are in and out in 20 minutes. So
right.
And you said mobile phone, can they bring their own laptops if they need to have help with those?
they can do, yeah. If they want to bring their own laptop along, that's fine. Or if they just want to learn how to sort of navigate around using the accessibility features, then we have laptops on site which will all be set up and ready for them to use.
Oh, that's good. So if there's someone who's visually impaired and they want to do their shopping online, can you help them with that?
Yes, so we can show them how to enlarge web pages in the browsers,
Right.
and if that's still not big enough for them, then we can show them the magnification shortcuts so they can
right.
zoom in on certain sections of the screen, and that will help them navigate around the website.
Okay. And that includes things like supermarkets and stuff like that?
Yeah, it would be anything you could find online we can help with.
Oh, that's good. Brilliant.
And then just the general use of a computer, people who might want to write Word documents, or there are some features within certain programs on laptops where you can put text into them and then the computer will read it back to you.
Are there voice options for people to hear what's going on?
Yeah, so there's loads of accessibility options which are available to computer users today. They've really sort of gone above and beyond to make sure everyone's included.
That's all worth knowing, isn't it?
So
what do you think, Lisa? You think that's a good idea?
Yeah, I like that.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if people want to take this up, your offer up, how do they make an appointment?
So if they just give us a call on 522205, and they can speak to Chris or speak to me. If I'm not in the office, Chris will be, and then we'll just get you penciled in for one of the Monday sessions. If let us know what you want help with, and then just turn up on the day, and we'll get you sorted.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Oh, fabulous service.
It's a fantastic service. I know you're going to talk about the talking newspaper, but Chris wants to mention the prize giving
awards.
The awards coming up.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad Sam's here talking about the techie stuff, because that's not my strong point.
No, me neither.
So he's doing a sterling job there, Sam. I just wanted to mention very briefly, this short story writing competition. Obviously, the deadline has come and gone. Mm-hmm. The stories are with our mystery judges.
Yes, you had thousands of entries, did you?
Not quite thousands, but we did okay. I'm very pleased with the amount we had this year.
Good.
So we will have our award ceremony, which this year is going to be a Friday. We've normally had Mondays.
Right.
But this year it is Friday the 8th of December.
Oh, wow.
He doesn't like Mondays.
I
don't like Mondays.
Okay.
Sorry about that. So the doors open at 6:30, and the ceremony will start at 7. Mm-hmm. I can reveal exclusively here that we have the entertainment that we've got.
Yes,
we've got a lovely choir. They are called Solent Singers.
Right.
So they're going to be performing for us. As you arrive, you will be listening to.
We'll be serenaded, will we?
Well, you could be. You could be, Maggie. I'll make a point if they have a word, and as you come in. But you'll already be there, hopefully.
Yes, we'll be there in plenty of time.
Because I've got you working, haven't I?
I know.
Yeah, and
sorting
Kelvin.
out stuff.
Yes. So we've got the choir to open the show as people come in. We've got Huxley, magician.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Now, he's brilliant this year because he's actually got something going on in Ryde, I think he told me. But he's going to dash over to us after. I think he's going to do like a Vicar of Dibley. So he's literally going to dash from one place to another to get to us.
Right. Good for him.
And then we've got Ben Stubbs.
Oh, good.
Who's performing for us. Yeah,
he's a good lad.
Yes, you know, you've had him on here, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah, but he was there last year, wasn't he, Ben Stubbs?
Yes, we're giving him more time this year.
He was wonderful. He wasn't not a diva.
Absolutely not.
A very nice, down-to-earth bloke.
Genuine guy. Mm. So it is free, so you don't have to have entered the competition to come along. If you just want to come along for a bit of festive fun, you're welcome. So Riverside Centre, doors open from 6:30. Ceremony starts at 7.
Lovely.
Ooh, so there'll be prizes given galore.
Absolutely.
And the bar will be open, I take it.
Bar will be open.
Yep.
100%.
Good. Now, talking newspaper.
Yes.
That I know it well for various reasons, which we needn't go into. But you're in charge of that as well, are you?
Yeah. So a service that Sight for White provide, if people wish to receive it, is we do what's called the Talking News. Mm-hmm. So every week I collect stories from the County Press, Island Echo, Isle of Wight Radio, and these all get put into they get allocated to, we've got home readers, so there's different home readers each week, so I'll send them stories, they will record them and send them back to me. And then on the actual Friday when the Talking News gets recorded, we have some volunteers that actually come into the building. They will read any stories from the day as well. Once all those have been recorded, so we'll also include things like skips and scaffolding. So,
very important if you
don't fall over them.
If you're visually impaired, we let you know where all the latest scaffolding's been erected and where skips have been placed.
That's handy.
It all gets recorded, and then once it's all been edited by myself and the volunteers, it then gets put on a USB stick. And the USB sticks are sent out to all members which want to receive a USB stick. It's in a Articles for the Blind envelope, so it doesn't cost anything to send. When they receive the USB, they can plug it into a laptop or one of the speakers with a USB socket on the top. They can listen to all of the latest news, and then when they're done, they pop it back in the envelope, flip the address label over, which has got our return address on the back, and then they just send it straight back to us.
Brilliant.
And it just cycles around every week.
And it goes on Alexa as well.
Oh yeah. We also put it all out on Alexa, so people who've got the enabled speakers can just listen in.
Don't say it.
No. What, Alexa?
No.
No.
Add 500 eggs to my shopping list.
Yes. What I usually say is, Alexa, play Vectis Radio.
I think my Alexa's probably gone off now.
Yeah. Okay, so that's excellent news. I know you send it out. It used to be, because you'll remember, because your mum used to be a reader on that Talking newspaper years ago.
Did I.
Not around, so did you. That used to go out on cassette tapes.
You did.
Special cassettes.
Yeah.
They were quite big things, I seem to recall. But
They were.
There was the transition to CD at one point as well.
We're now USB sticks, simple, light, no problem at all.
Yeah, and reusable as well. That's the main thing for the environment.
It is. And I suspect that visually impaired people still have the same problems that sighted people who are trying to plug them in right first time.
Yes.
You never get it around the right way first time.
No.
That's just the law.
We do put a little bump on.
Yeah.
So
that's cheating.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So if you want any more details, again, give us the number of the website, please.
It's 522205. You'll come through to myself, Sam, or Chris, and we can sort you out.
That's good.
Thank you very much.
That's brilliant service.
And we'll see you again we'll see you very soon, because we'll be down at the award ceremony, and we'll get you in again probably next month sometime.
Lovely. Look forward to it.
Thank you.
Your support matters. We operate thanks to the support of local businesses. If you would like to advertise on Vectis Radio, FM 104.6, contact our team today. marketing@vectisradio.fm.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good evening. Authors who choose to create blind characters have traditionally found it a bit of a risky business, particularly, although not exclusively, if they're not blind themselves. We are quick to seize on inaccuracies, things that we feel don't portray the real experience of what it's like to be blind or partially sighted, or which go a bit heavy on the pity. But in my experience, this hasn't been the case with Anthony Doerr's 2014 novel, All the Light We Cannot See. Not only did it wow the critics, but it's been an international bestseller, which most of the blind people that I've talked to have raved about. Well, I'm not going to spoil it for those who haven't read it, except to say that it's set in Nazi-occupied France during World War II. Our heroine, who happens to be blind, gets involved with the local French resistance, and there's a very valuable diamond involved as well. But we're talking about it now because it's just been adapted into a TV series on Netflix, and we wanted to see how well it had made the transition from book to screen, particularly in the eyes, or should I say the ears, of visually impaired people. It's audio described. So, to discuss it, we're joined by three people who've engaged with the production in different ways. Sean Randall is an avid consumer of books. He's read this one, all 500 plus pages of it, and he's been binge watching the 4-part series over the weekend, as have I. Our own Fern Lulham read the audio description script, and Aria Mia Loberti was one of 2 actors to play the part of what you might call the heroine of the film, Marie-Laure Leblanc. She's played as a small child by Nell Sutton, who's also blind, and by Aria as a young adult when most of the action takes place. So, Aria, let's start with you, and we're delighted that you could join us from Rhode Island. You weren't a professional actor, so how did getting the part come about?
No, I never really considered being an actor. It was always something I desperately wanted to do, especially when I was little. But I think for people with disabilities, but really for anybody from a marginalized background or marginalized community, you don't get to see yourself have a lot of opportunities that would challenge the expectations, and it just becomes an expectation you have for yourself. So for me, being an actor, even though I loved to dance and sing and do impressions and sort of wow my family under the age of 6 or 7, I never really thought about acting because it seemed tantamount to being a brain surgeon or going to the moon. So I turned my attention instead to academics. It actually brought me to England for like 18 months, which was one of the highlights of my life. I did really well and I enjoyed what I studied, but I had this feeling of emptiness, to be totally frank. And I knew, as grateful as I was for all the opportunities I'd had, I'd spent my whole life fighting for my education. I finally got to have an amazing one, that I didn't want what I studied to be my career, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then out of the blue, my orientation and mobility specialist from when I was a child, I hadn't talked to her from when I was like 11 or 12, honestly, texted me and said, I saw this casting search come up for this book, and I didn't know if you were familiar with it. And I most definitely was familiar with the book. But I wrote back to her, no, I don't act. So I hope they consider casting an actor who's blind or low vision for this character, because I think that would be really amazing to break that glass ceiling. But like, no. And the next day she texted me again and said, have you changed your mind? And I said, no. And then I thought about it and I was like, maybe this is something that I could just do for fun. And it would be a few minutes of fun reading, you know, from one of my favorite books and just send it in, and I could lift my spirits a little bit. Maybe it'll give me the courage to like try out for community theatre or school plays or something.
Right. So you went along thinking you didn't have any chance of getting the part.
Yeah, no, I was just having fun.
Right.
Yeah. I didn't have any expectation. I didn't know how the industry worked either, that like if they keep calling you back for 3 weeks, they're at least considering you. I just figured they called back everybody. So I really didn't know what was going on.
So how did you prepare for it in that case? Did you just turn up?
Well, yeah, no, I just showed up. I think there was a beauty in it because I didn't have this expectation that I was going to get far. I didn't do it with the intention of going far. And so I wasn't like, oh, I have to stick this landing or anything. I was just having a good time. So I didn't have a lot of stress about it. It was just fun. So I started out meeting with the American casting director. There were casting directors situated in every part of the world for this character because they'd been looking for a really long time. I didn't know that. I think they'd been looking since July, and I auditioned in October. And she worked with me, and then we worked on some of the scenes together that weren't recorded, and then we recorded some of the scenes over Zoom together. And then I went to meet with the UK-based casting director who was in charge of the whole search. And that was really hard because she said to me, oh, when you come on this call, you know, the director, Sean Levy, is going to be there on the call. And he directed one of my favorite childhood movies, which is Night Museum. And I'm a huge Stranger Things fan. And he's the director of some of those episodes and is really involved with the production. And I'm just like, oh, my gosh, this is surreal. And then she goes, well, you have to do a British accent. Would you be okay with that? And I'm like, oh, actually, I just came back from England. I studied for over a year getting my master's degree. Mm-hmm. And she's like, oh, let's try a little accent. So I did it. And she was like, well, you sound like you're from Essex. I'm like, well, I'm very sorry, but one of my best friends ever and my best friend in England when I was studying there was from Essex. So unknowingly, I was doing an impression of her. But since the audition, we've tightened up the accent. So I no longer sound like I'm from Essex.
Well, I'm so glad you raised this because I was going to ask you and I wondered whether I should. And then you came on and there you were with your American accent. But you've got such a...
It's very funny.
Come on then, Aria, give us a bit of English.
Well, when I was doing my impression of my friend from Essex, it kind of sounded like this. And, it's not a very good Essex accent, I'll admit, but it was what I thought was right. And then I slowly started to soften it out on the audition. And then I worked for 2-3 months with a dialect coach named Neil Swain, and he was phenomenal. And he really helped me transform my accent into something that sounded a bit more authentic. And I've since done audiobooks in a British accent. So I'm like, that's very intimidating.
Well, no, honestly, you really do sound English. I'm just going to bring in Sean because you've been listening to her all the weekend, Sean. Where did you think she sounded like she came from?
I mean, English, without a doubt. That accent nailed it. And in fact, I think, Peter, for people who haven't heard the series yet, they wouldn't believe it's the same person. That's a remarkably good accent, Aria. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. I really have fun with accent stuff. I didn't think I would be that good at it. I really appreciate that you say that.
Well, no, you do. You sound like you come from Hertfordshire.
It's lovely, isn't it? Can I just chime in very briefly here, Peter, and say that my daughter and I are big Stranger Things fans, so Sean Levy was a name familiar to us as well. But, Aria, what you've done by being on my TV all weekend is what's happened to you by meeting him. I am now thinking, gosh, I'm sat talking to you in the same way you might think you were sat talking to him. That's incredible. That's quite an achievement.
Aww.
That's brilliant.
God, thank you.
Aria, just one more thing before we move on to discuss it a bit more. This was your first big role. You were acting alongside some pretty big names, weren't you?
Right, you are now sitting in front of my radio.
She grins. Her hands wander over the equipment, finding the microphone in front of her.
What's the microphone for?
The microphone is...
He sits beside her.
Connected to this, the transmitter, and I sometimes use it to add my voice to the babble of voices.
What do you say when you speak?
I say, isn't the world a beautiful place?
And then you ask, so why are we destroying it?
Marie, your father is waiting.
When I heard you speak downstairs, I was certain I knew your voice. Most of my life, I have listened to the broadcasts of a man who calls himself the Professor on shortwave 1310. You are the Professor.
Well, that's absurd. Do I look like a professor?
I don't know what you look like, but I do know voices as if they were faces.
I was never really sure that there was anyone even listening.
I was always listening.
Your father will be waiting.
He retrieves her cane and places it in her hand.
Here. And you're careful on the stairs.
I know.
It's 5 steps.
Actually, it's 6 steps. To the left.
To the left.
That's Hugh Laurie showing you his radio setup, which plays an integral part in the story, and that's you correcting him on the number of steps in his own house. What was it like to act alongside him and Mark Ruffalo, who plays your father?
Well, I want to just point out that the end of that clip that you mentioned about me correcting the steps was not in the script. Hugh just kind of messed up the number of steps, and I turned around and gently corrected him in the scene. And actually people were laughing so hard when that happened that it became something people liked and it became part of the show.
It's a keep it in moment.
Yeah, it was really funny because I think he was just like, well, goodbye. And I left and he was like, be careful on the stairs. Remember, it's 5 steps down. And I'm like, Hugh, I have been filming in this attic for 6 weeks, dude. It is 6 steps. But it was very funny. And that's what it was like working with him. Like we were always tongue-in-cheek joking with each other, and if we weren't joking with each other or trying to make the other person laugh, we were philosophizing about something. He's one of those people that just has this beautiful warmth about him, this sense of authority, but it's not intimidating at all. And my first 3-4 weeks of filming were actually all of the scenes where Marie is by herself, and then I slowly transitioned to working with the other actors. And my first day of working with more than one other person was some of those scenes where we're all around the kitchen table. It's Hugh and Mark Ruffalo and Marion Bailey, both of whom I love as well. And I was really intimidated, but they're just incredible people who, they're the top of their craft, but they don't make you feel like they're giving you any pressure or anything. They all took me under their wing in different ways. Mark and I had met a lot before we started filming because we wanted to really perfect that relationship on screen. And with Marion, it was just so nice to have another woman on set to look up to, because this is a very, even though it's a female-led drama, it's a male-dominated show, and it was a male-dominated part of history. So it was really nice to have her input, and I'm a really big fan of The Crown, and Mark plays my favorite Avenger. So and I watched House, so just getting to be in the room with those people, it felt like I was living some sort of wild fantasy. It was crazy.
Well, just one more thing on the character of your part before I bring in Sean and Fern, because apart from it being quite a wild adventure, authenticity is one of the things people seem to like about the book and the way it deals with blindness. And Fern and Sean may say more about this, but how did you decide to play Marie? How much is she like you, for instance?
It's so interesting, and I'm really glad you asked this question because, a lot of the time I'll stop and look at this character and she's just so amazing and so special, and she's sort of the archetype of a human being that we all really want to be, and I'm nothing like her.
Well, is she too special?
She's so profound, and she's so powerful in her own way, and powerful without being the quote-unquote strong female character and the leather and the armor and the knives and the guns and going in a blazing. She's feminine as well, and I really like that those layers of traditional femininity, of softness. There's a domesticness about the character as well, but there's still so much strength, and it shows us that women can be both, and I really appreciate being able to portray a character like that. In terms of the authenticity, our experience of blindness is totally, totally different. I was born with my eye condition. She, in the book and in the film, goes blind when she's about 6. She is described in the book, it becomes more ambiguous in the show, but she's described in the book as basically seeing a black void, and only really 10% of the blind community has that experience. And for me, I can have a lot of residual vision and controlled lighting, but when I go outside in sunlight, that's when I become totally blind. It's not a black void, it's a white void. So depending on the environment, my vision can be so variable between 2200 or 2400 to absolutely nothing and in excruciating pain. So I'm her blindness is also very consistent. So that's something that we don't have in common. But I really wanted to shed a lot of light on the authentic portrayal, because I think a lot of people who may not come from this community or may not know anyone from the blind or low vision community may just expect a vapid face of vacant expression, palms out, feet shuffling, and someone who would never look you in the eye or attempt to look you in the eye. And in reality, that's just not the experience for this community at all. Especially if you've been blind for a long time, you are taught that it's the polite thing to do your best to maintain eye contact. And you do that by listening, by sound, by just looking above the sound of the voice, by following sounds with your eyes so that you can fit in with society. And for me, I did all of those things to prevent bullying when I was a kid. But for Marie, obviously she is totally blind. So the way she does that's going to be different than the way I do it. But she also is faced with the Nazi regime closing in, and they were not kind, to put it very lightly.
No. And I suppose, and the other thing about Marie, of course, because of the circumstances she's in, she doesn't go to school, she doesn't get that sort of any kind of formal training, which might be a good thing. Let's just turn to Sean Randall for a moment, if he's not too starstruck to speak to us. First of all, what did you think of the book, and what did you think of the series? I mean, a lot has to be lost from a 500 plus page book to suit the screen, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's very rare, I think, for me to enjoy a series as much as a book. I've always maintained that when you watch TV as someone who's got no sight and has never had sight, you're always playing catch up, because until someone's described something to you, you don't know it's happened sometimes, and that can leave you behind. In this case, the book was just poetry. The prose are beautiful. It moved me several times in different directions, and it was a really powerful read. The story that Ari has managed to sort of breathe through her portrayal of this character is amazing. And I think this may be a slightly unpopular opinion, but I'm afraid I engaged more with Vienna, with the male lead, than I did with Marie-Laure, because I think that was a very, serious thing too. I think he had a lot to offer.
Yeah, we've not really mentioned the fact that, of course, there is another theme running through this, which is these two characters, Mari, who we've talked about a lot, Werner, who we haven't talked about very much, who is being inculcated into the whole Nazi regime. And what you see happening is these two inevitably coming closer together. And so you're right not to forget about that. But in terms of Marie, we know she's blind. How possible do you think it is in an adventure story like this, which has got to be pretty, gung-ho, to make her believable? Because she's doing all sorts of things that probably you and I, as totally blind people, can't imagine ourselves doing.
I think that was done well. There's so much build-up. She works alongside the resistance, to help carry messages. But we see her learning and struggling and striving to pick up the geography. It's all twisted into a very believable aspect. And I think that was very cleverly done on behalf of Anthony Doerr. And again, with the portrayal, both media captured that beautifully, yeah.
Well, this might be a good moment, as you've mentioned that, to get a sense of the character that Anthony Doerr intended to create in his book. He couldn't join us today, sadly, but this is Anthony reading an extract when he was a guest on Radio 4's Book Club.
16 paces to the water fountain, 16 back. 42 to the stairwell, 42 back. Marie-Laure draws maps in her head, unreels 100 yards of imaginary twine, and then turns and reels it back in. Botany smells like glue and blotter paper and pressed flowers. Paleontology smells like rock dust, bone dust. Biology smells like formalin and old fruit. It is loaded with heavy, cool jars in which things float, things she has only had described for her, the pale, coiled rope of rattlesnakes, the severed hands of gorillas. Entomology smells like mothballs and oil, a preservative that Dr. Gaffard explains is called naphthalene. Offices smell of carbon paper or cigar smoke or brandy or perfume or all four.
You see what Sean means and Daria mean about wonderful writing. That's Doerr's thumbnail sketch of how Marie experiences the museum where her father works. That's before all hell is let loose in France, and the surrounding area, counting the steps and things like that. You do get quite a sense of her there, don't you, Sean?
Yes, I think it's one of those bits of narration that helps you get in her head, and I guess that's quite a hard thing for sighted people to do sometimes, because she's obviously blind. And I think the fact that we see Marie-Laure learning her way around, learning the routes, learning all those skills, shows sighted people that we can, as blind people, learn, and we are able. And that's one of the things he's done really well with the character.
Well, also with us is Fern Lulham, and Fern did the audio description for this. Before we hear from you, let's just hear an example of your audio description.
Saint-Malo, Nazi-occupied France, August 1944. Nearly a dozen hulking bomber planes fly towards Saint-Malo. United States Army Air Forces, 565th Bomb Squadron. Glowing anti-aircraft rounds streak toward them. One round hits a bomber. Flames trail from its wing. A plane's bomb bay doors swing open. Each plane drops a long cascade of bombs. Explosions burst in the ancient city below, blowing out roofs and leaving the old stone buildings ablaze.
That's taken from the opening scene of the Netflix series, and it's where audio description really comes into its own. It's where the Allies are bombing Saint-Malo to liberate it, which always seems a bit of a contradiction, but of course it had to happen. Fern, how did you get involved in this project?
I'd been doing audio description since about 2020, and I'd worked with International Digital Centre, who produced the audio description for All the Light. And they are really kind of leading the way as inclusive audio description providers, getting blind people actually involved in the process of doing it, not just making it as a product for blind people, but including them in the creation of it. And so I had discovered audio description as a user, which was a massive moment for me, because I think growing up, I'd never really realised how much I was missing. And I'd kind of internalized that as, why don't I enjoy films as much as all my friends do, and thought that it was some kind of problem with me. So when I discovered it, just as a user, it was an amazing thing to go, oh, actually, this is how I can join in. It wasn't my fault at all. It was just the lack of access. So now to be able to be part of it as the voice, to narrate the audio description was incredible. And also, I think just to be given that amazing responsibility. I think, growing up as, again, being blind, you kind of always wonder, will people trust me with big responsibilities, even just like carrying a cup of water to a table without spilling it, and being able to have that moment to narrate such an important series that really makes blind people feel so seen and celebrated was just amazing. It meant the world to me.
How does it work? Do you get presented with a script?
Yes. So Liz Gutman, who was one of the people from IDC who approached me along with Eric Wickstrom, she was the writer of the script. And so what I get is I get a script with the lines that I need to say in what they call events. So each little section of audio description is an event. And then you also get the timings. So, at what time do we need to say this and how long do you have to fit it into the rest of the track? Partly you're guided by the audio and the dialogue of the film or the series or whatever you're narrating. There's only so much you can do. But I think what Liz does really well is that she makes really punchy, short sentences. So she's got a wonderful way of being very concise, but also being very clear. And you kind of have to practice that as a narrator. How can I say this quickly, but also say it so that people can actually understand what I'm going on about?
So given how significant language is now thought to be, with sort of references to disabled people, blind people specifically in this case, do you have a say? Would you, if you saw something and you thought that's not right, it shouldn't be like that, would you bring it to their attention? Does it get signed off?
Yes. And I think that is one of the things I love about audio description, is that it's such a collaborative team effort. And it's really lovely to have teams that are made up of non-disabled and disabled people working together. But I know, Aria, you were even asked about the audio description. It was put through a few different people. Joe Strechet, who was also a disability consultant on All the Light, and everyone kind of says, yes, that is the right wording, that is the right language. So it's definitely a case of, we'll write the script and give it to you, but please give us your feedback as well.
So, Aria, let me put the question that Fern in a way put to you. I mean, what do you look for in audio description? And were you happy with the way that you've been audio described?
Well, to Fern's point, like when I was little, my mom had a list, one like printer paper sheet of paper long with like maybe 40 titles. And those were the films that you could get sent to you on a DVD, audio described. And that was kind of it. And so to go from that when I was really little to streaming starting to take over as I grew up was really amazing, because it allowed me to experience films independently. Like my parents got really into describing things to me, but also that shouldn't have to be their responsibility. And it was amazing because when audio description started to become really prevalent and relevant, they could just sit and enjoy it, and we were all on the same page, and maybe they would fill in a gap here or there, but we were just there enjoying the film together. I think with this, it's really special because it's really a labor of love, and audio description has gotten so much better in the last couple of years, but at the same time, it still sometimes has to leave some things out just because of what Fern was describing with like the spacing and things. You have to fit it in between the dialogue or in between sound cues. And this actually had an audio description introduction that Liz wrote that's like 12 minutes long that is now on the Netflix platform site. So you can go listen to it before or after you watch All the Light, and it will have things like hair and eye color and facial characteristics and clothing and characteristics of the city and props that weren't relevant to the story but still help you paint this image in your head. And I think it's so special to see how audio description has evolved. My best friend and I got to listen actually to the audio description together over the summer and give our feedback on it. This was like in May or June. And it was amazing because we made some comments, but there really wasn't that much to make. It's so cool to be a part of that.
Right. Let me just ask you one more thing. We were talking about authenticity of Marie-Laure. I mean, at one point, your character uses a gun. Did you have to learn to use one for the series?
Yeah, so actually, I loved the question you posed to Sean about, like, do you think this is believable? Because everything that we did, all of the stunts, everything you see on screen is me. There is no body double used, except there is a stunt double used to drive the car in episode 2, because no actor is allowed to drive a car for safety reasons, and I didn't want to be a chicken murderer because you have to drive it through the chickens. So, but everything else you see, everything else you see on screen is me, including being drowned in episode 2.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, and including
that's where the guy who wants the
gun.
jewel is after you, isn't it? Where you're nearly drowned. Yeah, nasty. Man.
Yeah,
yeah.
So I trained for a couple of weeks with a 1917 Colt revolver, and we had 2 of them because they kept sticking. And I learned how to shoot and I learned how to aim. You had some help from the special effects team on set in terms of, obviously these were not live, like full on rounds or anything, because no one should do that on a film set. That would be so unsafe. Like, I don't care whether you can see or whether you can't. But the environment was kept really, really great for me. I mean, the scenes were filmed in a more darker room. They take place at night. So that was just a happy accident that it was a really good place for me visually. But the character can't look at the gun. She's not using the residual vision. So I was adapting to the mindset that I would have if I were in bright sunlight doing those actions. And there's this really awesome sequence that our director chose to add in just based on some of the rehearsals that he saw with me rehearse, like learning how to shoot out in the bright sunlight so I could get into that headspace, where Marie is looking away from her arm and shooting in the opposite direction. And I'm like, it's so cool to bring that level of authenticity because it's all based on hearing. And I think he's done such a masterful job of conveying that.
Ari, it's so brilliant to get this kind of inside information. We are almost out of time, but there's something I do want to ask Sean. Do you think, given what we've just been talking about, is there a risk of us going from blind characters habitually being the victims in the films and the recipients of pity to being almost, superheroes and doing all these extraordinary things?
Well, this is a worry, isn't it? We had this with Daredevil, when there were lots of people on social media that were like, are you like Daredevil? Can you hear everything? But I think...
I got that seriously once a week in college. Are you like Daredevil?
Yeah, I'm sure. But I think what you've done as an actress is portray something on screen that you've had a really beautiful character to work with in print, and you've turned it into a believably blind character on screen. I mean, there are foibles, there are things that don't work when you can't see, but that's all folded naturally into your way of life. And all the things you do as part of the show are consistent, and that's what makes it so real. So no, hopefully we aren't too superpowered yet, and we will get more representation on screen. That would be good, wouldn't it?
And just sticking with you, without spoiling the ending, there is a bit of difference, isn't there, between the book and the series, which is quite an interesting difference. Have you spotted that?
Yeah. I was quite disappointed is maybe the wrong word, but we see, if I can say this without spoiling anything, a wider range of time in the book. And there is quite a lot of empowerment that seems to be missing out of the series. I did make note of one quote, and when Marie's talking to Werner, and literally all she says is, "It's not bravery, I have no choice. I wake up and live my life. Don't you do the same?" And I love that because we get a lot of credit for blind people as being brave. And I just love that response to being blind as a bravery thing. It's part of who we are. And that was quite nice.
But there's another thing, actually, it was Fern that pointed it out to me, so I'm going to put it to Aria, that they actually have a bit of a kiss and a cuddle in the film, don't they? And in the book, they just eat peaches. That's all they do. Is that a bit of Hollywood, do you think? Does that matter?
It was part of the original script, and there was a lot of debate about, is this too Hollywood? And we all sat down and we had a really serious conversation about it. And I'm like, I feel like the reason why we're sitting here and we're questioning whether this is Hollywood is because you would never hesitate to add the scene if this was a sighted character who is portrayed as powerful and confident and a beacon of hope for another character, and then they meet and they have a connection. Like, I don't think we'd be sitting here questioning this, would we? I mean, I guess we'll never know. And we opened up this whole discussion of, and I'll be very candid with you the way I was candid with the production team, of like, I have never seen a blind character of any gender representation depicted as an object of love, and I've most certainly never seen someone take command of their feelings And I have grown up essentially, before all of this happened to me, I grew up with this idea of like, yeah, of course your parents tell you that you're beautiful, but like, you're really not. The world is just turning you down. You can't be beautiful. You can't be loved. That's not something that's available to you. And I think seeing this heroine embark upon, yes, it's something that's traditional in Hollywood, but they both have feelings for each other. And Werner basically says in the book how much he wishes that he could stay with her and how much he wishes they could have a romance. And for her to act upon that and embody the connection and be the beacon for all of us that I think I can't speak for young men or I can't speak for other genders, but that a lot of young women wish that we had as blind women is really special, and I'm glad that it's included.
And Fern, I think that's exactly what you thought, isn't it? Aria's just pretty much set out your attitude to that.
Completely hit the nail on the head, and everything you said there, Aria, I was nodding along to. But I also just want to add, Peter, that I think one of the great things about All the Light is that it just emphasises what amazing radio presenters blind people can be. You know, it's just such an important thing, and I'm sure you agree.
Well, I'm not going to comment on that.
I agree with that. Look at Peter; he's doing wonderful stuff.
Exactly. That was my point.
Is this in code?
This appears to be a love-in, which I don't have anything to do with. Listen, that was fantastic, and Fern Lulham, Sean Randall, and Aria Mia Loberti, thank you so much for joining us. And the Netflix series All the Light We Cannot See was written by Stephen Knight and directed by Sean Levy. And that's it for today. But as always, we'd like your responses to anything you've heard in the programme and indeed anything you'd like to hear in future ones. Email in touch at bbc.co.uk. Leave your voice messages on 0161 836 1338. Or you can go to our website, bbc.co.uk/in touch, where there's more information and you can download tonight's and previous editions of the programme. From me, Peter White, producer Beth Hemmings, and studio managers Steve Thompson and Amy Brennan, goodbye.